recorded, your voice and image will be recorded. All right, so the first item, let's get through the minutes. So, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, and anybody have any objections or any issues with the?
Nope.
Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Truly, I.
Cliff, aye.
Shane, I.
All right, passes 5-0.
Sorry, may I interrupt here? Where's the link? Where's the Zoom link?
If you go to My Town Gov.
Oh, it's in, okay. Yeah.
It's right in there, yep.
Okay.
All right, is there any other business we want to do before we get started? I'm assuming, is Julie here for the recreation?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, so we got Rick, CPA, Board of Health.
All right, we can see Julie, you can come forward.
Sure.
I'm pulling up your revised budget,
Oh, yeah, good.
Julie, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share it. I'm gonna see how I'm gonna do this. I'm
All
gonna
right,
share it
guys.
on Zoom, so just bear with me
Trust
for a
you, yeah.
minute. Share screen. Let's see how this works. It worked. I'm excited. Okay. Doesn't take much.
It's on both screens.
It's on both screens.
Wow.
So you can
Something's
see it at
happening.
home and you can see it here.
For the people at home, there's general joy in the room. There's two screens, one we can read and one we can't.
And I can make this slightly larger.
No, good, you're perfect.
Where the heck is my Zoom? Oh, there it is. Darn Google Docs. There we go. Okay. So what I pulled up was the one that we revised, Julie.
Yeah, the one you sent me, I just want to see if it's matches.
Recording in progress.
Oh, I get the echo.
You gotta be.
So you do have to have the volume the whole way down, because I have it on mute.
Yeah, Bell picks up and reverberates.
All right.
Interesting.
All right.
You're wrong.
It's okay, hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Julie Lee, I'm the rec chair. I know, I think everyone in the room is on. So, the budget that our proposed,
We did something wrong.
Microphone towards your mouth, please. Thank you. They're just very directional, so I can't hear you well.
okay,
But you can pull it toward you too.
I
do a
think this
bubble
is-
say maybe.
all right, I feel good about this, okay.
You should. Everyone wants to hear you.
Got to treat it like an ice cream
Okay,
cone. Get
yeah,
right in there.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mary, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so the budget summary request that's up here, and we can discuss tonight is we are looking, I'll talk about the supplemental separate, right? So what's on here right now for the increase from our department is $11,110. And the makeup of that is coming from, just wanna make sure we can see. Okay, we are gonna have, since the pickleball is so popular down at the grounds, and we're keeping those courts open a lot longer in the season, the pickleball nets are actually still open now. People are actually still playing.
yeah, I saw
Oh my
that.
gosh, it's so popular. We do want to extend, keep a portable toilet over there for the duration of the season. So we'll put 4 units on the grounds because it is 9.6 acres of space down there. So the $720 increase speaks to that. We're having an additional portable toilet on that side. Then we have the trash. Since COVID, the highway department's been doing the trash down on the commons. And as we know, the highway department is overworked as it is.
Yep.
So we've been asked to assume that back into our budget. And we do have a quote that's attached in our packet that I submitted to Kristen, and we're being quoted at $1840, so that's the increase there. The big, huge increase is going to be the field maintenance down on those grounds, which is where all the baseball teams play and all the soccer teams play for the youth. The school also uses that side of the property too for gym class. The current field condition right now is subpar. The fields are not in playable condition. COVID was a factor with that. A small budget's a factor with that. The drought was a factor with that. So the soccer program actually has proposed a CPA project, which the Community Preservation Act Committee approved. That's going to go to town floor. And they're going to do a total overhaul on those grounds down there to make them safe and playable, which requires a whole lot of fill and fertilizing and all that stuff. Can you hear me still? Okay. But we didn't want to support the project, even though it's a great project, without a maintenance plan in place, right? Because then it would just be throwing money out the window,
Yep.
which we've been successfully doing for years. So we met with Kristen, and we met with different companies, and we met with the soccer board and the baseball board, and we came up with a really great field maintenance plan, but it's expensive. So the field maintenance plan annual cost just to maintain the fields is $27,600. And that includes aerating, seeding, slice seeding, fertilizing, all the stuff you have to do to maintain those fields. We did acquire 2 quotes. The third company that we asked for was not able to do the work because they're just understaffed also. And so we did get the most competitive pricing on that. But we wanted to have a plan in place for the fields so that we know moving forward, this is the dollar amount to maintain that space. Soccer's going to contribute out of that $27,000. We asked for a 3-year commitment from them, so they're gonna put in $8,000 every year. Baseball's gonna put in $1,000, and then rec is going to assume, and that's the big makeup there on that dollar amount of, you'll see it went from $12,450 to $18,600, so that difference of $6,150 is what we're adding to our budget for that field maintenance. We'd like to get to the point where once we have safe playable surface, we can rent those. You know, there's different AAU programs that want to come in, different groups, youth groups that want to come in and rent them. But the feedback we were receiving was because the fields are not playable, we can't rent them. So this is where we start, and hopefully, as time grows on, and we are renting those fields, any rentable revenue would go toward the cost of the fields. But for right now, if this gets approved on town floor, this project, we want to be able to have a good maintenance plan in place
Yeah.
for the next year
Yep.
or 2 years while we build up that rental
Yep.
agreement. And that's why we had asked for a 3-year commitment from soccer. So after that 3 years, and we can revisit it with soccer and say, okay, where are we at as a rec committee, and how much are we bringing in that we can help contribute to this year over year?
Julie, quick question. Did baseball make the same 3-year commitment?
As far as I know, yes.
How much was it again for baseball?
Baseball is going to do 1,000.
1,000?
They're a much smaller program
Okay.
than soccer.
Well, it's understandable
Yeah.
if they're smaller.
Yeah. And then again, we can still certainly, rec works really closely with the youth programs.
Mhm.
So if this is something where, soccer wants these fields to be in great condition. So if they're thriving, and everyone works closely enough together, we can revisit the conversation and they can say, hey, because they do get 2 full seasons out of the grounds. If they're making more, which we're not going to hold our breath on that because they are youth programs in Berlin. But then we can have that conversation because everyone speaks pretty honestly and wants to work together with that.
May I ask, I have to talk to this. Excuse me. I guess a little clarification. I know the CPA is putting in that proposal for a total redo of the fields. Assuming it passed, do you have any idea when the work would begin on that?
Yep, well, we'd have to go out to bid still. We did a much smaller scale project on the very back field, and they started it in the summer when we just had that small field being started. So the bid process would probably be what would slow it down. The work itself could be done in 45 days.
Okay. So in the event that proposal doesn't get through town meeting,
Yeah.
does that affect your plans at all?
Well, no, regardless of, we would need to treat the fields with the same integrity, whether it's done or not done.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
Alright.
just we have sort of 2 things happening, right?
Yeah,
We have
right.
this great opportunity to get the fields in pristine shape and then maintain, or we're starting from way behind, we're still gonna fertilize, we're still gonna seed, we're still gonna do all those things. But without that irrigation, because they're adding irrigation to the fields too,
Yes.
we'll just be at the mercy of Mother Nature year over year, right? Which,
We'll change the maintenance plan for
which,
sure.
sure, it would likely probably be even then more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. you're
Appreciate
welcome,
it.
Cliff.
So is it likely that if that is approved, that there could be a season in jeopardy of being able to use the fields when the work is done?
Sure, no, that's a good question. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna sort of do the acreage in a little bit of a phase in that, the way back field where the salt shed is, where the 11B11
Yeah.
field is, right? They're gonna use that primarily as the playing fields, and then if they have to put the young kids, kindergartners, if you're looking directly at the salt shed to the left, there's a grass space there.
Mhm.
They'll put those kids there, so the whole out front will be rebuilt, and that back field will be used, because the kids don't play at the same time. The older kids play at 4:30, the young ones
Right.
play at 1, it goes back down. So they'll be able to fit them in, but that backfield then will get beat up significantly, so then they'll rebuild that backfield in the next season.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So do you anticipate, you could do part of it summer, hopefully, depending, well, it'd probably be early fall and then spring, maybe? Are you thinking those would be your 2 seasons, or?
I think that, depending on, I know the soccer board's working diligently on laying out the field space, and I believe they're working also with the school for that area behind. We've used behind the school in the past, too. Mr. Campbell's allowed that when we needed field space. So I think it would depend on how they lay out the fields as far as timing goes.
Okay.
Because they do play fall and spring
Right.
for soccer, yeah. They've also explored moving, using Boylston, asking if they have fields over there that we could use in the interim time while our fields get built. I don't think that's gonna be an issue, actually, where the fields are gonna get put, because there's so much turf down there.
So you got plenty of grass down
There's
there.
so much. You just have to plan it,
Yep.
masterfully, right? Which is not my wheelhouse, so I won't do that.
It's
But we
okay.
have people that do, so. Yeah, okay, so that's that. And then we also have an additional, under other expenses, we have $1,000 for the irrigation electricity and $2,100 for the irrigation maintenance. Because again, if the irrigation's going in, there has to be a plan moving forward annually for that. And the soccer program did these quotes. And there it is. That's our whopping total department request of $11,110.
More than, so for a total of 28,660.
Yep. Sorry, yeah, that's a total, correct. 28,660.
Yes,
There's
let me
more.
switch screens.
There's more. Stay tuned.
But wait, there's more.
There's more.
That's what we're here for.
Okay. You want all the more?
Okay, so this is
We have
the,
3, right?
yeah, this is the summer, the first one that's coming up is the summer program.
Okay. Okay, so now we also submitted 3 supplemental funding requests. So the first one is, okay, there it is. Okay, this is for summer program camp counselors. We do not currently have a summer camp program in town, and we hear year over year over year how, where's the summer camp for the kids? And we remind people graciously that we are just a volunteer committee. We are doing the best we can. But it's something that the community needs, especially the homes have changed and parents are both working now. So their kids need somewhere to go, and they are going places. They're either going to Northborough or Clinton
Yep.
or elsewhere.
That's what we do.
Right, right.
Unfortunately,
Right,
larger
because
boys.
there's nothing offered here.
Yep.
And I think we have a really great committee right now that really wants to eagerly pursue this, but we need camp counselors to do that. We can't do it just on volunteers. We've been subsisting on volunteers for so long, and you're only going to be as good as your volunteers. So we are requesting that we have Summer program counselors, we'd like to hire 4 at the minimum wage of $15 an hour. We want to run that summer camp. This year, we are running one. We're not going to go with 4 counselors. We're only going to probably do 2 because we don't quite have enough for that and everything else we want to get. But for next, we want to do 4 counselors, 4 hours a day, so it'll just be half a day to start. We'll do 8 to 12, and then the following year, we'll see, and maybe we do 8 to 3, do an extended camp. This was actually recommended from the Northborough, I know her really well, the Northborough rec director over there.
That's
And
good.
this is how you start to build the camp, is you have to start with that small, and then you build it to be longer. So we're looking for 4 camp counselors at $15 an hour for 4 hours for 5 days. That's $1,200. And then additionally, we're looking for 2 people that would help us throughout the season. So that would just be 2 kids that we would just call on throughout the year for holidays in Berlin, for movie night, for the Easter egg hunt. They would know what their role is throughout the year, and that would also be for at $15 an hour for 3 hours a month. So it's a much smaller amount of hours worked for those kids, and that's for $1,080.
So if I can jump in for a second,
Yeah.
Julie. So my recommendation and what we talked about is that there is $1,500 in ARPA funding that was allocated as sort of seed money to kick off this summer's programming.
Okay.
And they're going to charge fees for that, which can go into their revolving fund. So my recommendation was that the $2,280 would come out of their revolving fund based off of the fees that they would receive this year. Because there is so much cost for maintenance, and you'll see what the other funding requests are that she has, or the Recreation Committee has, which I think are all valid. I think if you're looking at specific times of year or things of that nature, when you know there's going to be fees coming in, you can likely supplement those fees with the proceeds that you're going to receive from charging the camp fees. And that's really the point of having a revolving fund, so it can come in.
Yep,
It
in and
can
out.
go back out.
In and out.
And I'm hoping with like that ARPA seed money,
Yeah.
you can kind of build up a little bit, or enough at least to fund it next summer, and then it's just going to keep growing, and then you can just do more and more as it goes on. If something that's more of a permanent position like the rec director, like we talked about, you'd want to have a payroll line item in the operating budget, because that's not based on receiving fees per se. So that was kind of what we had talked a little bit about on this one.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Did Northborough help you out, kind of like the employment part and also like charging? So you guys.
No,
can
no,
compare?
but she said once
Okay.
get past
But
this.
a good support
and then
for-
we'll
okay.
meet. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Great.
But she's a
Cool.
great
Great.
source
Awesome.
to have. Clinton
Good.
Rec Director is his too.
Now, you mentioned, the counselors. I mean, are you looking at them just being kids, or who's actually in charge or running? They had a camp.
Yeah, that's a great call, a great question. The director will hopefully, if this gets approved too, we'd like to have a director, but that director would oversee the camp and then do the hiring of the counselors. I think it would be, in my opinion, I think it would be great to have high school kids do it, just because it is a kids' camp and
Mhm.
you have to be, not that older people can't, older people could too.
It's a good
I don't know
summer
if they
job.
want to. They
Yeah.
might, they might.
Well, I know it's
you
like all the complications of it, because it's like they usually require them to have all types of CPR training and all these other type of stuff that's not trivial for the number of hours also you're, requesting here. I mean, they might have to actually put more time into, to get the job, and they'll actually spend hours on the job.
Sure, yeah. We actually, Rec's trying to do a CPR first aid training to do up at 1870. We'd like to just have a firefighter actually come in and do a training for anybody that wants to get trained in that, in general, in the community, on that front. But also, the Northborough Rec Director was explaining to me that camps are funny in the sense of what words you use, camp versus clinic, changes what you're required to have.
Yeah, I mean, use it to your advantage.
So, right. So if something's a camp, there's different requirements. Board of Health, yada, yada, yada. But if it's a program or a clinic, you don't have those same requirements. And that may fall under that, Scott.
Right, well, I guess the question could then come into like liability insurance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That'd be the employment.
That was my
That'd be
next
the-
question.
That's, it's like one of those things, it starts small, but it's like, you end up realizing all the other pieces that have to fall into place. So.
Probably a good thing.
Right.
Just ask Northborough how they do it.
Right.
Because that's the biggest thing, if you can do it on the,
Well, that's just it, right,
Over there.
people are doing it, so
Yep.
there's certainly, but I can get that information, yeah.
help yourself too.
Yeah, right.
Well, you will need to know the liability issues because someone will be responsible,
Right.
Right.
whether it'll be the town
Oh, right.
or if it happens on school grounds, will the school department be responsible for that?
I mean, it's a recreation program, so it would be covered by the town's insurance.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend, and if this, goes through, I would recommend these be seasonal positions, seasonal
Yep.
camp, whatever we end up wanting to call them. We put a job description together.
seasonal
It
hire.
would go to personnel.
Yes, he's on high.
Get approved, and then Cory checks would be required as
Yes.
part of that
So you haven't talked
process.
to personnel yet about these positions?
No.
Okay.
And you do have also, I saw, you have a rec director, as we go through here, a rec director draft job description, should that get approved
Yep.
as well. So the camp ones are a little simpler because they're more seasonal positions. Typically, we do smaller, simpler job descriptions for those. Rec
Right.
director is a little bit larger. All right, let me go to the next one.
Kristen,
Yeah.
does the town pay for the quarries, or are they free to is it as a public?
They're free to the town.
Good.
But I can only run them for town programs, as we ran into town functioned programs. So sometimes we have people from town who are running programs that aren't run through the town. Hey, can you run a quarry? No, we can't do that. We can only do it through towns, for town-run programs.
Yeah, thanks.
All right? I got your software one
Oh,
pulled up.
great, okay. So this is a software that many recreation committees and departments, many recreation committees and departments use, including all our neighboring communities. What it is it streamlines the process for registration for programs. And so at first thought, you may think, how hard is it to register for a program, right? It's so much work. You have to make a flyer, which you have to pay for that. You have to make the flyer, then you have to make the copies, then you have to put them in the backpack program. I'm sure your kids come home with that, with the flyer. Then you have to post it. Then there's a Google form that you have to attach. I mean, the amount of work that's put into just running a yoga class is immense, right? So this software streamlines that whole process. And you can even look around your computers. If you type in myrec.com, Boylston uses it, Northborough uses it. It's so user-friendly. You just go on the site, you register yourself, you register your family, and then you can just select which program you want to choose as an adult, which program you want your child to have. The payment process goes through that as well. The user fee is attached to the person. The town doesn't assume any of that. But it comes at a cost. So it depends on what your revenue is. If your town the rec department makes less than $25,000 a year, which we do currently, we only would pay $2,800 annual fee to have this service. And I know you think of like, oh my gosh, that's so much money, $2,800 a year, but it will just be on a rinse and repeat. It's worth every single dollar to spend that kind of money, so the people in the community can access what's available to them for our programs. Because
I was also going to make, because you were talking about it last year too, about getting your rec director.
yeah.
And that's one of the things that's far fewer hours that you'd have a paid person handling this.
Yeah, well, far fewer hours, but you could put your hours into the programming piece of it, because that in and of itself is a massive job, that part.
Yeah.
But this, it just makes it easier if you want to say, hey, is there any, yoga, or is there any Tai Chi, or is there pickleball, or, you just do.
Well, this is coming up too with the Powder House News and people asking, like, how do we find out what's going on in town? So this is covering more than just rec.
Correct. yes. Yeah, because you can link anything right on there.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And I
It's
do have
awesome.
to say, in terms of what software programs typically cost, this is incredibly cheap. I mean, it's very short money for the amount of labor that
Yeah.
it saves.
Mhm.
I was shocked when you said, I'm like, uh-oh, rec software. Because I looked into like
Yeah.
the rec softwares where like it schedules fields and everything at one point, and those
Oh.
are like $15,000 to $20,000.
Wow.
So this is,
Yeah, it's
It
big.
goes up.
yeah.
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 Yeah. But
I mean, I don't know.
this
yeah.
is a very reasonable
start.
It's a good start.
cost to start off and then save some of that time on the
Right.
back end.
It'll be, yeah, it's just, and I did a Zoom call with the guy, and they're super supportive. I mean, I know they're making a lot of money, but they're super supportive, easy to speak with, very approachable when I spoke with him. And the fact that other communities around, Boylston's
Right.
doing it, it just speaks for itself.
Yep.
And it's
this is
easy
all
enough for
like-
you to look at.
It's all web-based.
Yep.
That'll be
Yeah.
just on,
It's easy. My
be
wife and
on
I use
our-
it for
just
Northborough.
connect. We just connect to the town website.
Correct. Yep, I would put it right on there. Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So you said 2,800, it says 2,000 in the request. Am I
Oh,
wrong
yeah,
about
so
that?
in good faith, I said, we do have a revolving fund, rec does. It's depleting slowly, but I said, why don't I proposed to the committee, we could put in, because we do have money in our revolving, we could
Okay.
put in 800 to start. And then eventually, I know in Northborough, she's something, right? She is 20 years going, but she's now a completely self-sustaining department. She doesn't have no money comes from that town budget for the Northborough rec. It's just all programming. The software is paid for, her salary is paid for, her assistant's salary is paid for. And she's my mentor right now with this.
Mhm.
So, which has been great because she's walking me through, but she says it has to start small and
Yep.
grow to get there. But, just to emphasize with your town that these figures look big, but over time, it will just be, like you had said, it's money in, money out, easy peasy.
It's for the kids and the parents too.
Right.
Peace
Right,
of mind
it's-
and
Smart
kids get to
growth.
have, oh yeah.
Right. Well, you use it.
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah,
Yeah, we have to go to Northborough.
right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, and we don't want to do that. We want to
Nope.
sort of keep our community base here and, and bring the money here. So that's that one.
Well, and I'm, just to add my 2 cents again, sorry I keep interrupting you,
No,
Julie.
I'm going to take notes.
I'm kind of excited about this too, because this is something, when I started in September of '22, Julie and I, it was like one of the first things we talked about when we sat down in our initial meeting was how do we get this off the ground? And I feel like you've really done your homework and you've got a great mentor. And I think this has really come together in something it's logical and it makes sense. So kudos to you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
excellent. Yeah, our children need it.
Yes.
And then
Okay.
I've got your director one pulled up next.
All righty, last one. All right. So this, my mentor actually did say, she did say we would be the only rec department around that does not have a paid position. And if you want to be able to run rec programs for all your residents, she runs adult programs too. She's not just, primarily it is for children, but she also runs adult programs too. She said you need somebody that's going to be paid on staff. It's just simple. Because, as we all know, you're only as strong as your volunteers that year and the next maybe 2 or 3 years after that. And you'll never, you just will never be able to sustain the program with the passion that you want, to deliver to your community. So she said, start small. And Kristen and I had this conversation too. You have to start small. So start as part-time. You need somebody on staff that's part-time.
Yep.
So I remember we talked about this last year. So I came up with a rec director part-time job description. I wrote this, so this could certainly be tweaked in some capacity, in whatever capacity you like. But I think it really spoke to all the roles and responsibilities of a rec director. And then I explained the need, as I just reiterated. It's just a needed position in today's communities. There's a want, I think, for recreational, we all know, for recreational programming that supports communities' physical, mental, and social health. And in order to achieve this, we need somebody that can devote a certain number of hours per week to this goal. So I've been doing this for a while. volunteer, and, you know, you think about the hours you put in, right, as a volunteer. So I said, how many hours really is that, right? But then I just logged it, right? And now I am very type A, and I like to take notes very methodically and chart everything and log everything. But I will tell you, just for doing what I'm doing, it's 10 hours a week plus. This is just for rec, and then there's, you know, the other committees. But it takes time to come in and turn in the checks and then make the copies and file this, and you have to keep accurate, nice ledgers financially. That's all falls under this same position. So we're asking for $10,400 for a part-time rec director. We have the job description written up. Yes.
I have a question because, again, we had COA in here a couple of weeks ago, and they also run, I think direct activities are mostly for people in the senior community, but is there going to be a chance for collaboration with this process? Because it sounds like we'd have like two separate organizations doing similar types of programming. If you're talking about things like yoga and Tai Chi, which is things that are also offered by the COA.
Julie, I was thinking a similar line, you know, where else does this align with somebody's existing job or somebody who might right now be part-time that would be able to do this? And I think about in the school district as well as in the towns, where would this fit?
I don't think I understand.
Taking these duties of this job description and say, can we have somebody who's not standalone, this is recreation? And the question about, you know, this is more, I think, intended for youth sports, that sort of thing. And the question is, what about senior sports, right?
No, that's why I said that.
Yeah, and you weren't part of the conversation a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this, you know, Council on Aging kinds of things.
Because the COA director is asking for more hours as well to hire another person.
Yep.
So it's sort of thinking, do we have like two different groups that actually could collaborate on certain things rather than have two separate groups duplicating effort?
Right.
I think they're very
Right.
different things, though, what they're doing. So COA is doing outreach to seniors for issues such as, you know.
Well, not asking them to do the outreach, but they also have a lot on their schedule where they just schedule Tai Chi or yoga or.
Yeah, and the other piece of it is the administrative load. You know, you got to bring the checks in, you got to, you know, do the accounting, do the paperwork and that kind of thing. And I think the town has suffered from lack of administrative support for a while. And so one of the challenges I'd put out to people thinking about it is, can we bring this together in some way where there's an individual, even with you, Julie, as a volunteer, that there's somebody that is part of their job to do these kinds of tasks, because you know, having somebody who's degreed in this recreation area doesn't need to be bringing in checks and getting them to the treasurer or something. Does that make sense? You want that person focused on the activities, not on the back room, if you will.
And I do
Well,
want to say, I
check
support
piece
you in what you're saying, that you
Yes.
need a professional, a paid person to do this work. It's just
Yeah.
where it's going to get done.
Yeah.
So the check piece would be managed through the software. So that's spoken for already. I think when you think of Council on Aging and recreation, there is partnership, sure, that should be had there, absolutely. I've spoken with Victoria about that, and programs that we could do together. But I also think they are very different, they're very different jobs. So recreation isn't sports, right? So
Oh, yeah.
recreation is, so if you were to
I
look-
would hope so, right.
Right, it's not, that's a part of it, but we don't oversee the sports programs. The sports programs are independent of rec.
I understand.
Okay, so we support them, of course, like we would support chair volleyball for seniors if we ran that program, right? But they are very, very separate. Rec would run recreational activities for the community. Council on Aging does, right,
Yeah.
the aging community, right? So there would be some crossover where rec programming would include specific senior activities that maybe Victoria would talk up in her group of people. But to say that that could be done as one job, I'm not so sure. I can see that as clear as you can.
No, I'm not saying one job, but I'm saying how could you line it up within rather than making a commitment to adding more staff to the town departments, is there a way to utilize existing expertise? And I understand this is very different. Recreation is very different from school sports. However, we have experts working in our schools in the sports area, right? And they have the kind of thing that your average person coming into work 4 hours a week doesn't have, right? And that's, I think the word I'm looking for is leverage. Can we leverage some things we're doing today already to help with the Recreation Committee's goals? Can we do that? And particularly if we're looking at another tough budget year. So largely because of the schools. So can we think about other creative ways to do this? You know, Kristen's comment about ARPA monies to help kick this off, because I certainly like this stuff, and I think I'm sitting next to a guy with little kids, and of course he likes it too, because it makes sense, you know, to do this right here in our community. I'm just looking at I'm just saying, think about alternatives. And I really like your proposal too, because I know I've seen a progression.
Yeah.
It's good. The town's getting bigger.
Because we were talking about this last
Right.
year as well, because this was things you were
Right.
telling us that you were hoping to get together, and
Yeah.
this is a really great package.
Yeah.
Was the director on last year too, or is this the first year the director?
I think I had written that it would be coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
released. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a good, complete vision,
Yeah.
what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
helpful.
agree.
Yeah.
So in terms of cost, I believe Julie indicated that over time, what happens is the programming, which brings in revenue, will ultimately pay this position, which would then not be a cost burden to the town government.
It's all big.
Now, maybe initially, it's going to be, depending on how successful you are and with your vision, but it seems to me that it's a temporary cost to the town. In terms of the comment about school personnel bringing skills, yes, they would, but school personnel are accustomed to contractual payment, and I would find it hard to believe that, you know, a $10,000 job would look particularly attractive given the number of hours involved. But I may be wrong on that. I really think it's a good investment. I think in the next few years, of course, Rec will be able to show that we're actually paying for this,
Yeah.
and that this essentially is seed money.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it as seed money.
Yep. Same here.
And, you know, I would hate to have you come back next year and say, well, we couldn't find anyone for 10, so we need 20, and we don't have the money, that would not be a good look.
Right.
And that would be difficult to support.
Right.
But you made your pitch, and I see this as seed money.
So did the 20 per hour come from the Northborough recommendation?
No, hers was actually higher,
Okay.
so we scaled it down.
That's.
Cliff, one comment I would make on that, though, with it being a personnel line item, as I was saying before,
Right.
I would want to see it at least for a few years in the operating budget until you're seeing consistent year-over-year revenue
Good
coming
point.
into that revolving fund, because we've run into a few situations where we thought a personnel position would pay for itself, and it doesn't always work out
Got
that
it.
way.
Yeah.
And so that's
Got
my
it.
one caveat.
Yes.
Good.
What was Northborough saying? Around like $25 an hour?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
that's good range.
I mean, she was just emphasizing that, look, recreation is it's in communities, it's a part of communities.
yeah.
No matter what age your community members are, everybody enjoys recreation.
Yep.
And that can be all sorts of different things.
Right.
You know, all sorts of different things. The more, and she even suggested too, we're not going to recreate the wheel here. So what she's doing there,
bring
you
it
can
over
do
here.
here. They
scale it
want
down a
to
little
share.
bit. Yep.
Clinton's the same way. They want to share these programs and
Yep.
these vendors so that everybody can take a slice of the pie, so to speak. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
your community
Absolutely.
members are staying. I think sometimes what people think about when they think about rec is that it's just sports and kids. And it's not.
Yeah. We do the
And-
nature camp. Do you guys, we do
Yes.
nature camp. Oh, yeah. Legos. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
It's
we have to go to a different
amazing,
town.
yes. And you can look at, if, I would just invite you to look at
Yep.
Northborough's. She does stuff for all ages, and it's a really great thing to have going there.
I'm just curious, I mean, you mentioned obviously Northborough Clinton. Does Boylston have a program? Do they have a paid rec director?
Boylston does. Boylston doesn't have a paid rec director. They have a paid admin that's responsible for building out any of the projects that they're doing, managing the rental of the Hillside Gym, all
Do you know if that's a
their.
full-time position that they
Um,
have,
I-
or is it part of the regular?
No, I believe the salary on that's 30. I don't know if it's full. Is that part-time? I don't know what that is.
That would be,
Wonder if they'd share.
well,
Oh, for sure.
I was just thinking, could we make it a full-time? We're talking about regional on a couple of different
Yep.
things with Boylston, which made me almost wonder, like,
Makes,
could you
interesting.
maybe
Mhm.
talk about a regional approach? Because I wasn't thinking about Boylston, which we partner with on so many things.
Yep. Yep.
Right. Well, you jumped ahead, but that was my next question, was considering.
Well, it's options.
I'm
Options.
sorry.
The
Options,
other
yeah.
part of that too was,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
you know,
just
because
flows.
you take Clinton
Just
and
flows right
Northborough,
out.
I mean, they're like 4 or 5 times our population of Berlin, right? So their size scale is dwarfs our scale. That's what I was thinking more also with Boylston. If they have some of these positions, what have kind of, do we have an idea of, because that's, you get a better idea of what pays for itself. You start looking at much
Right.
smaller. I mean, Boylston is still 2x us in size.
Right. Well, Bolton too. She's
Right.
self-sustaining too.
Yeah, and you start, but even Bolton still, I guess they're.
Yeah, they're more comparable
a
to
little
us.
bigger than well, I think.
No, Bolton?
Boylston, but I'll.
Oh,
and
well.
We can check, but
Okay.
either way, I mean, yeah, if you just get an idea or even talk to them where it's like, how close are they to, you know, because one of the last thing you want to do is start making terms of like, we want to start paying for itself, right? I mean,
Right,
and-
right.
But what is a realistic number? Because the worst thing you want to do is 3 years into it and go, you're still paying, only compensating 20% of the program or that stuff. So if you look at a smaller place like, yeah, Boylston or Bolton or whatever, instead of the Clintons and Northboroughs, what is realistic on their program? Because that'll give you an idea that if you can look and go, there's, at our size, there's like no chance that we'll ever pay for, you know, it'll be self-fulfilling for, you know, best case 50%. I mean, whatever the number could be.
I don't know, Scott.
Well,
That's a
that's what
lot.
the thing, we don't know, that's the
Right.
issue, right? And it's, when you're comparing like big, I mean, when you get size, that makes a big difference
Yeah.
for, you know, covering the costs. But when
Right.
you're small, it's like, well, like I say, you don't want to get expectations out there.
Sure.
That aren't realistic. I think it would be good to like evaluate with Boylston or
Yep.
Bolter, that stuff, before setting any expectations. I think that's one of the worst things I hear from this conversation is there is a little bit of an expectation, I think, or hope that it will be paid for. And
Yeah.
how realistic from a town of our size is that? And then, of course, if you do a regionalization of Boylston, well, now all of a sudden you start becoming, combine the two, we're like half the size now of probably Northborough. Now you start getting a little bit closer to, and if we can just maybe get realistic what those numbers could be. Because like I say, jumping to Northborough size may not be a good comparison in terms of will you get the money in to pay for the program going forward.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
But you're recommending a scaled-back approach, or they are too, right? Like how to start Northborough?
Correct.
She's not telling you to, start
Well,
it.
I understand.
Correct,
I
correct.
understand right now. I mean, the things are, will look ugly percentage-wise up front because everything's, we're
It's an
small,
investment, yeah.
Right? It's small, but I
Right.
just want to make sure that it's like there's not the expectation because the worst thing you go down is 3 years, 4 years from now.
Say it's
And I
gonna be
can tell you one other thing. I
self-funded.
mean, I remember No, I used to do fast pitch softball, that stuff, and meeting with the different teams in the recs, and this was in Littleton. And one of the quick things Recreation Department quickly pointed out is when economic downturns come, guarantee you the rec department's going to be the first one hit in town when cuts have to be made. And so you don't know what kind of economic downturn could occur in the future, but it's like, well, the last thing you want to do is set up an expectation that, well, yeah, this thing's a failure because you guys are only, it's costing 10,000, you're bringing in only 4,000.
Yeah.
Even though it might be only, the number seems small at 6,000, just, I guess, be careful about, saying what could be self-funding on this thing, because we are so small. And
Yeah, but so here's a good example, right? You can run a soccer camp and make $2,500. I mean,
Is that like a 1-week camp?
Yeah.
Well, I would almost argue to your point that, and this is also why I said keep it in the budget.
Yep.
You would start with the 10 and you would see what the revenue coming in
is.
If that supports you adding more hours.
Correct.
And then it kind of snowballs like that. But you have the 10, you're secure, and then you have to look at what you're able to actually bring in
Right.
on the revenue side.
Yeah, it'll be biweekly pay anyway, right? So you just have to know what your biweekly pay is.
Right, but I think to your point, Scott, before you were to increase anything, you would have to say, well, we have the revenue coming in to back that, or you'd have to come back with a different plan, because I think we want to be careful, like you said, the 10 hours a week would be general fund operating budget money.
I also want to emphasize the idea of collaborating with Boylston. Another, now that we are a fully regional district, it's probably a good idea to have some significant conversations about that with them.
Yeah.
And all these kids are going to end up in the same school anyways.
Oh, yeah, right after 5th grade, yeah.
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 All right.
Just a little point, I was here looking things up. Northborough's population is about 16,000. We're on the north side of 3. Boylston's around 5, just under 5, I
We'll
think.
have 10 next year.
Yeah, and then...
Yeah, but she started somewhere. This was
Oh,
20
yeah,
years ago. Allie's been
I
going
get
20
it. And
years,
then
you know.
Bolton is maybe it's on the north side of 5,000.
Yeah.
So...
So
see
yeah, so
different-
she's self-sustaining. Bolton
Yeah,
at 5.
yeah.
So it's doable. Things are different now with families.
Oh, God, yeah, I know.
They just are.
Oh, no.
Both parents
That's
are working.
That's clear.
Yeah, exactly.
And, but even if you took the two towns together, Berlin, Boylston, Northborough, still double that amount. I'm a little concerned also about a little bit what Scott said, which is why I was suggesting, can we try to leverage it rather than have a rec position that sits out there that's easy chopping, is to bring some of this function into other positions. And I hear you, Cliff, and respect your understanding of the school environment, but I'm not saying that it would be within the school, but some of those individuals might be interested in doing additional work outside of their normal school environment as a place to go with, to get that expertise that really applies when you got the particular thing of youth and sports, right?
I don't understand what that means. I'm sorry.
Knowing the first aid stuff, knowing what to do in terms of getting the teams together, all that sort of thing. People that know how to work with kids.
Yeah, sounds like, she's on the right track.
Yeah.
Let me know. I've started businesses from scratch. I've taken from 32,000 to over $1 million, and overseen $700 million. So it's just, I'm here to help. Just help me, nuts and bolts.
Thank you.
I like it, Julie. How's that?
Okay.
That part you
Thank you.
understand. Okay.
I just don't know if I see what you're saying, but I think this is separate and it needs people, it just needs to happen.
Yep. Oh, as a parent?
It just needs to happen. Everybody has a rec director. Everybody.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yep,
And
we
I
go
know
to
that we're
Shrewsbury
small, but it doesn't mean our community members don't need programs, because they do. And I
they
don't
do.
think the soccer coach that coaches
Yep.
5-6 soccer can, on her free time, run a soccer clinic. That's the point I'm making. Like, I think everybody is
Yeah, I
doing-
understand. No, my
just
thought.
doing the
Sure.
best they
My
can.
my thought is more around summer programs, those kinds of things, right? I'm not. I get it. People
Yeah,
have full-time
yeah.
jobs, right?
Well, they do. In the schools, they do have summer school where the staff do work in the summer.
Yeah.
They have that opportunity to do that.
The other
Yeah.
thing too, you have to keep in mind too,
Writing
is
it
the way
down.
that we've been,
We're gonna get yelled at.
June.
the way that we've been trying to work with it and hire people.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of people now who we can get to do a smaller, you almost have to bulk it up a little bit to make it more worthwhile, is what we were finding when, so could we possibly take the admin part and make it combined? Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
Take the admin part possibly, because there's a couple of different departments that need that.
Mm-hmm.
Just do
But-
options. Option A, option B, option C. kinda
Yeah,
funnel
and
it,
I
then
think it's
work-
hard
work your way
because
in.
I think what you do for, as far as the recreation stuff is so, I don't want to say specialized, but
Right.
it's no longer the volunteer can do it in your spare time type thing, and I think, so I mean, you could offer even more things, I think, just because way back when we used to have more volunteers that could do more, like with the old home day and, all that kind of stuff. I think at one time there was like trips to the casino.
Yep.
There was all sorts of different things,
Yeah.
but having
Yep.
somebody to do that, to start doing just that.
Yep, the programming.
10 hours.
Yep.
Versus if you can I don't know. I
But
get what
this
you're
is-
saying, and I think it's a good idea, but I don't know what.
But this has come up with,
Come in.
over the past few years of other positions. That's what happened with the COA director, because that was a half-time position. And then with the ARPA funds, for a few years, we were able to add in half-time social services as well, which we didn't have before then. But part of that was to make the COA director's job full-time, rather than have it as a half-time position, then that person, if they want to work full-time. Like before that, I think the previous director worked half-time there and was half-time managing 1870 or something, like they had split jobs. And so, and this has come up with some other admin jobs here as well, where some people I think have had admin roles part-time in a few departments so that they can get enough hours. And because the two concerns, because this is such a great idea, it's not like we're down on this idea, we're
No,
really, really happy to see this.
Yeah.
If you have somebody whose job is more likely guaranteed to be here, it's going to be harder to cut it, which I think Mary was trying to say. If all you
Yes.
have is like a 10-hour rec job, and we have a tough budget again next year, that is far easier to cut that than it is if that job is attached, if that person's doing multiple jobs. That's adding up to like close to a full-time job.
And you
So
all beat
we're
me to the
thinking-
punch. Because I was just going to say it would probably be easier to leverage on the admin side.
Yes.
Because the programming side is so specialized, which I think is what you all were getting at.
Yeah, and even with software, you need to be some hands-on about, the software. Software also requires a human.
Well,
So-
and I also
Right,
like
yeah.
the idea of having somebody potentially like physically here who could
Exactly.
handle cash and handle paying bills and doing that kind of component of it
Right.
too, and taking that burden off of you guys. Like that's a lot, 10 hours a week with everything else that you do,
And that speaks well.
which is amazing, but it's a lot. Like,
Yes.
But the other thing too is our town, I notice people still like to be able to come to the town offices and talk to people.
they do.
It's not
Yeah.
like that with, I mean, it's.
They usually find June down in the back and hang out.
No, but it is a quality of our town, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I've noticed.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Cliff.
It merits some further conversation and some thinking. Sure.
Yeah, just options.
Yeah.
have you talked about any of this with, I know I mentioned the personnel committee, have they been involved at all with this
We
yet?
don't usually bring them in unless something's approved at town meeting. And if I had an idea for kind of a multi-departmental position, I probably would, given the idea of something that's a bit more straightforward on kind of the summer camp seasonal workers or the rec director side. That I typically wouldn't come forward with a job description or discussion until, it's something
No, I was
that were to
talking
be
more about the
approved.
this overall talk about basically leveraging, again, some of these things that are coming up that
Yeah.
people need.
Well, interestingly enough, last year in the budget process and supplemental funding, Mary, former assistant in our office, put in for a 20-hour a week, what she called a floating admin, and obviously that's, funding and everything else didn't really work. But it's been kicked around a little bit, so it's certainly a conversation to have again.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the first time, but it
Well,
all
as I
comes
said, I've
down
been
to
hearing
money.
it
Oh, yeah.
on and off since been on FinCom, so it's not going to go away.
Is
not
there an
super
accountability chart for the town? Kind of like roles and responsibilities and who?
Yeah, we have like a communications chart and where everything kind
That'd be
of
good to see,
flows.
'cause that's,
Yep.
yeah. 'cause then-
Yep, you can get that.
So this is all pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm excited
I'm
just
gonna
as a
get it.
I'm
parent.
excited.
I want to go to a different town.
I know.
No? You remember we were talking about chalk, right?
I do remember chocolate
About
bubbles.
chalk.
Yeah.
Was that $10?
We're going to buy her
Look
some
at,
sidewalk
look at
chalk?
how far
Right,
you've
the dodge
come.
this,
Look
so
at
much
this.
chalk. I know.
Sidewalk
Look at
chalk,
this.
That's what we go through all
Good
the
job.
Out of that conversation.
Good job.
It was riveting. Cliff, it was riveting. Okay, that was great. Thank you. Oh, I
Thank you
appreciate
so
your
much.
Thank you for all you
I
do.
love your sweatshirt.
I love this sweatshirt.
They're so comfy,
This-
right?
Oh,
it
yeah,
is so-
nice.
It is the most comfortable
Isn't it?
sweatshirt I've gotten.
Yep, I agree.
Where can you
I
get
got to
it?
show this off.
Do you
on
still
the-
have any
Rex sells
more?
Wreck this? Okay.
Yeah, it's
I
on-
think
there's a
Peg
link.
wasn't Peg wearing one too?
Peg,
Last-
Peg probably had one. She probably was
Okay.
the first one to get
Rex
one.
sells
So
them?
cool. Yeah, Rex
But-
selling them.
But yeah, it's on the
I'll be
your
getting one.
Yeah, it's on the website.
it's on the website.
Okay.
Yep.
And they're hand
Or you
delivered.
can just email. Yeah.
Hand
Felicia-
delivered?
Felicia
Worst
delivers
case, I'm
them.
next
Yeah.
door. It's easy. Yeah.
That will help fund some of.
I know.
There you go.
I know.
Buy
That
a
was,
sweatshirt.
that was all
Sounds
Felicia
familiar,
though.
Felicia.
She did that.
She's around the corner from me by
Felicia, yeah.
Okay.
Wheeler's
Oh,
Garage
yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, your kids probably go to school with her. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Julie.
your time.
Thank you.
I think
Thank you, Julie.
get the CPA.
That would be next.
Are we in trouble?
No. Before you get started with your next thing, the distance to the microphone isn't so important, it's the direction
Oh, okay.
Oh,
of
okay.
it pointing at your mouth. Actually, if you get right up on it like that, I have to turn the microphone way down. It's
Okay.
better if it's about like a foot from your mouth or
Yep.
something.
Just talk, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's just, the biggest thing is pointed at
Right
your
at
mouth.
you. Gotcha.
Yeah, because then I can adjust the levels, that's fine. Am I doing all right? Yeah, you were fine, I could hear you well.
I know she was
that
speaking
well.
up.
How about me?
Okay.
I can hear you fine. But yeah, the really important thing is just that the microphone's actually pointed at your mouth. It doesn't have to be inside of it.
Ooh, I like that. Fit all columns on one page.
my
Thank you.
Don't swallow.
I can't
If you
hear.
you can find that one,
anything
it's
you
in the
say.
bottom.
Yeah, okay. Good to know.
But it only needs to be pointed at your mouth. You don't need to be right up in it. It should be a foot from you. See, I learned new things.
These are
Yeah.
different than the.
But pointed at your
bigger
mouth. It's a
mics.
directional.
These are better.
Hello.
These are much more sensitive. The crummy ones we use at the school committee.
Tim, you're up.
Would you prefer to stay there?
I don't have slides to display for you, Tim. I'm sorry. Unless there was something you wanted me to display.
Uh-oh.
Can we go low tech?
That's been my preference throughout my life.
There you go.
Just hold up a little poster for us. We're all,
You want to know what we're spending money on?
Yes, and how much you have to spend.
So the good news is that because of the return of the match from the MVP program that we had with the Horseshoe Pond project, we pulled in 868,000 back, and 850 of it went to CPA. So that rejuvenated the fund significantly. In the preceding 2 years, we managed to pull in 100% match to what we generated internally, which, 2 years ago we generated 305 or something like that, and the state matched that, I think, 99%. This round, we generated over 300,000 again, but the state didn't generate as much revenue. State's revenue is generated through fees at when people are doing land recordings. So there was a downturn, so we only got a 68 or 69% match, which, compared to most municipalities, we're still in the top 15 or whatever in the state. So we
That's
still
pretty good.
perform very,
Yeah.
very well, because the fact that Berlin folks were so generous in voting the 3% to begin
Yep.
with, so. So this year, we're going to add the 305 plus 179 or whatever, so, less than 600, less than 500,000 actually. But because we've got so much built up with that return of the 850, this year, all the projects that we're proposing will utilize funds that we already have in hand. So where in preceding years we were using some anticipated revenue, much to June's chagrin, this time around, as far as we're concerned, as we look at the numbers, we're pretty clean. And we're just going to use revenue from preceding receipts, not anticipated. So that's the good news, I think. So there are 5 articles on the warrant that relate to CPA. The first one is the housekeeping piece, where we take 10% of our anticipated revenue. I mean, it's what we already collected last year plus what the state gave us, basically. And so 10% of that goes to community housing, 10% goes to historic preservation, and 10% goes to open space and rec. And that's mandated. So the article will ask that the town vote to put the 10% of those funds into those pots, and then 5% will go to administrative, and then I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what number it is, but the remainder will go into a fund balance, a balance reserve account that allows us to utilize it after we clear the books. And June is happy.
Yep.
But as we said, we're not utilizing those funds this time around. We're just parking them where they need to be parked. And then the 4 articles, one is for the Housing Trust to continue to work with the Housing Coordinator. Last year, the Regional Planning Commission had an opportunity to get a grant to pay for a housing coordinator that would work with half a dozen towns. And we said we were interested, and we would commit to employing that individual on a part-time basis for the 2nd and 3rd year using our funds. And so the CPA committee agreed that this was a year ago, we'd commit $10,000 this year and $10,000 next year to help pay for that.
So CPA is community planning? Sorry, I don't know the acronym.
CPA is Community Preservation Act.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Thank you.
And Berlin voted that 4 years ago or so, so we've had a revenue stream from CPA for now.
Okay.
For
It's
the,
3% on real estate tax.
Okay.
And it goes into a piggy bank that you can use to, you pile up money, then can do real projects.
yeah.
Cool.
So,
But there's no piece for maintenance, which is why when Julie was here talking about rec, that's
Right.
why, you have the big project about the fields down there, but then the operating budget has to pick up all the maintenance. So that's a
Yeah.
question that we've asked Tim
Yeah,
and the
and-
CPA folks to always take a look at with the projects. What's
Yeah.
that impact going to be?
Okay.
So we've really tried to drive that home with any of the project proponents, so they understand that when they get through us, they still have to deal with you guys, and it's not as much fun as it is with us at all, so
Oh, and,
they need to be prepared.
no, that's right, that's right.
Well, it is true. I mean,
Yeah, it is true.
We
Look.
give away money, and you
Look.
say,
Look, come on. But the cool thing about the Community Preservation Act is the state matches the towns
That's
and the
beautiful.
municipalities
Good.
up to whatever level the state pool of money is, available. And then they kind of like it when the towns had a choice of 1% or 2% or 3% on their taxes, whatever.
yeah, lots of
And-
combinations.
And Berlin was in relatively early and went in at 3%. So for us, the state is a better partner. than for some other towns.
Good.
I think Boylston went in at 1%, 2?
Yeah.
1%.
I mean, the program's been around since the early 2000s, and Berlin tried on a couple of occasions, but really didn't pull it off until 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And the 3% surprised the folks that helped run the Coalition for the Housing, the Community Preservation Consortium, because they said there hasn't been a town for quite a while that's gone for 3%, which we did, and were successful. So it's really something to brag about, I think. I mean, the people in Berlin really stepped up.
Okay.
But as a result, the tennis courts and, projects like that, Acquire and the 100 acres on Mount Pisgah, Acquire and the 6 acres behind the Powder House, stuff like that. It's
Amazing, good.
good stuff. Things that we most likely wouldn't be able to muster the wherewithal to do, but because we've decided to gradually chip away at it with this 3%, the funds are there now, so that makes quite a difference.
That's good.
So this time around, it's, as I said, the housing coordinator, which will work with the Housing Trust. Housing Trust is only a year and a half old now, and the opportunity to have a housing coordinator work with them is pretty significant, because this coordinator is working with the Regional Planning Commission, and as a result, they work with 4 or 5 other towns. I think they work with Grafton and Upton, Auburn, Millbury, maybe. So they're working with much larger communities, and they end up being able to bring a lot of the new innovative approaches to what's going on with housing, affordable housing, to the town.
Tim, remind me on the Housing Trust, is that a nonprofit or is that a public entity that's, what is that? You've told me this and it's not sticking, I'm trying to remember.
So the trust is a piece of the town now. I mean, we voted to accept that chapter and verse, so there's a committee that's formed. That committee has a lot of authority, though, independence compared to what you'd find with most committees in town. They can borrow, they can do quite a few things.
Sorry, I asked the wrong question because I do know what that is. I read the proposed draft and everything on it, so
Right.
I do know. No, the person whose services we're getting, where
So the
is she?
coordinator-
The coordinator,
So
yeah,
she's
that's
working out of the Regional Planning Commission, so Central Mass Regional Planning Commission.
Central Mass Regional
Yeah.
Planning, okay. That was the part, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the, Kristen knows, because she's worked with the Regional Planning Commission for a long time. We pay just under $1,000 a year now. I guess next year we'll probably go over 1,000. But there are 40 towns in southern Worcester County that are part of the Regional Planning Commission. There's 13 RPAs in the state. This one is the best run as far as I'm concerned. It's grown. I've been with it for 40 years now, I think, and when I started, we had a staff of about 12. Now we have a staff of over 50, and it's just ballooned in terms of the ways in which they can reach out and assist communities. So one of the important things that we're trying to look at the Regional Planning Commission level is housing and affordable housing. So having this coordinator to work with the trust is really going to make a big difference.
Thank you.
And they received, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission received a state grant for 1 year for
Yeah.
this service or this
Yeah, it was.
position?
They could support it for 1 year, and then the communities that were participating, we're buying 4 or 5 hours a week. So 10 is coming out of CPA, and then some additional funding's coming out of some of the money that we've had from mitigation when we did projects like Highland Commons, or, well, even the senior housing on River Road, Brook Lane. That put in some mitigation money. So we pulled a little bit from some of those funds in order to come up with the additional money that's needed. So we'll do this with CPA funds for this year and next year is what we've committed to. That's what the commission wanted. They wanted some sense that towns would join in and stay with the program for longer than just a year and then bail. So we said, yeah, we'll buy in for 3 years. And if we continue with this, we could continue to support it with CPA money. So, or a good chunk of it anyway. So that's one project. The second project is also from the Housing Trust. One of the things the consortium said to the CPA committee was, don't be overly generous with the community housing money. In a lot of communities, the 10% is just automatically tossed over to that committee by vote of town meeting. So they put the 10% into the community housing fund, and then they vote to take it all and give it to the housing trust. And the transparency then begins to disappear because you may get some reports back from the trust. So they said really try to figure out from the trust's point of view how they'd utilize the funds and come and ask that those funds be set aside so they can be nimble and useful with the funds and not have to go to a town meeting to ask that X amount of money be used to help with a Habitat for Humanity project to build an affordable unit on some tax title land, for instance. So, so they want $200,000, and right now they have, if not 200, just shy of 200 in their bucket. So essentially, they're taking the money that's accumulated for community housing, and they want to transfer it out of the hands of CPA and into their hands and utilize it for two purposes. First-time home buyers support. So lots of times somebody can demonstrate that they have the ability to pay their mortgage, but maybe not that down payment. So the opportunity to utilize some of the CPA money that's in the hands of housing to maybe give somebody $10,000 with the stipulation that, if they stay in that property for 10 years,
Yep.
It's, free and clear. And if they sell the property before that time, they've got to pay some of it back to CPA. So that was one use. And then the other use is that the trust is working with Habitat for Humanity, the North Central Mass chapter, and they've been working with Kristen and trying to figure out exactly which tax title pieces of land in town might be available that aren't in the hands of conservation. And over the years, when we've taken tax title parcels, we've sometimes held them and said, this might very well be utilized for housing at some point. So they're looking at a couple of those pieces, and the notion is that if Habitat were to say, if you could supply us with the piece of land and, some sum of money, maybe, 10 or 20 or 25,000 to help with that home, then we could, move forward with a project in your town and build an affordable unit. And the thing that appeals to us about this is that so often our affordable units have been in new construction, so, a big project ends up with 10% of its housing or 15% of its housing is affordable. But this would sort of implant those affordable units into existing communities. So you might end up with one in South Berlin, or you might end up with one in the center of town, that sort of thing. So they really get integrated into the community instead of just isolated into a project.
So Tim, would the Housing Trust then satisfy tax title amounts, and that would make the land available for Habitat for Humanity? Is that how is that the dynamic? Is that how it
No, I
flows?
think, the town has taken those and they own them. And so there's no I don't think there's any expectation that someone's going to end up paying that
okay,
back
okay.
tax.
Okay.
So
I
it's
think
just a
it's
deed,
forgiven.
like a deed.
Yeah.
So so there's really no CPA money that goes in on that.
Not on that part.
Yeah.
She
No.
said 10 to
Okay.
25 they would need.
Yeah,
For the
I mean, and it might vary. I mean, in some cases, Habitat may say, just giving us the land is all we need.
I see,
Um,
okay, right. Because the Housing Trust could also contribute to the building of the unit.
Yeah, and so there's two purposes they want to put this money to.
Yeah,
First-time home buyer assistance, but perhaps in the construction of an affordable unit on a piece that we'd work with Habitat for.
Just a single family? Sorry.
go ahead.
We don't have provisions for duplexes in town.
Okay.
But when we've been working on the planning board with some of the housing issues, duplexes have come up in our conversations. When we did the surveys 2 or 3 years ago, when we were updating the housing production plan, duplexes didn't rise very high on the list of choices that people would have if they wanted smaller cottage housing,
Yep.
Stuff like that. So if we were to come to town meeting with a proposal to add, duplexes as a matter of right, it would be interesting to see whether it would be supported or not. I think it would be, because I think if people thought about it seriously, they might say, that's a way to deal with affordability. And
Would an in-law count as a duplex, Tim?
well, I mean, the thing about our in-law bylaw or accessory bylaw is that it's 35% of the structure, whereas a duplex would probably be 50/50, so, yeah.
Is it the
not yet.
terminology duplex? Is multifamily a better term?
Yeah.
Well, multifamily usually implies something like, multifamily is what Riverbridge is, multifamily is what the over 55s tend to be.
I'm just bringing the real estate perspective.
Yeah,
When I'm working with buyers, they don't want to look at duplexes.
yeah.
Because they have to deal with their neighbor.
Mhm.
There's no intermediary or negotiator.
Yeah,
And if there's a problem, they don't want to deal with that.
right.
A multifamily implies something different, I think.
Mhm. So anyway, that's another topic, but yeah, so we're
I know.
working on that one.
I'm just putting the pitch in.
Yeah.
So Tim, in the warrant language, do these two purposes show up, or these intentions in the, thank you.
And the model that the Housing Trust has picked up, I think, is from North Andover, that talks about the first-time home buyer support, that sort of stuff. So that's not included in the article, but it's there in the wings. I mean, it's something
Okay,
that they have and are, I guess, committed to in terms of how they want to run the program. So that's those two. The third project is out of conservation, and it's $30,000 to support the study and evaluation of the feasibility of a rail trail on that stretch that the MBTA controls, which stops at Coburn Road. So it would run from the Hudson Line to Coburn. And that they're coordinating this with an earmark that came from the state that they actually didn't realize that was in the wings until after they'd initially come to CPA. So that earmark is something that Kristen knows far more about than I do. And then some of that earmark money has been committed to this study, and then some of it potentially could be used for a broader view of trail networks in town, as I understand.
That's correct.
So this is 35,000, just a contribution to a much bigger amount for the study.
Yeah, because
So you said
what have
30?
you committed?
30K.
We said, you've got 40, so there's 70, and it's an application to the state, what?
Mass Trails grant.
Yeah, so there's a,
DCR.
DCR's got a Mass Trails program, so they're going to apply to them for this grant. I think it's clear on the regional planning agency level, there's been talk about the Central Mass Rail Trail for a long time because, it's this cross-state trail through the heart of the Commonwealth. And parts of it have been built east of us, parts of it have been built west of us. And Berlin ends up being this piece that's the missing link. So what, we've talked about is, what is the best way through town? And this is going to evaluate the impact of trying to utilize that particular stretch that MBTA owns, because the state's focused on that. And whether that's a feasible approach is what they really want to try to evaluate with the use of these funds. So
Tim, Kristen, do either of you have a view of what the minimum is that Berlin would need to put in on the earmarks? Is 30,000 the minimum, or is it some lower number?
The match,
Yeah,
it's 20%.
20%. So when the total is? Total is?
So right now, the total for the feasibility study is still being determined, is my understanding. Let me back up a little bit. The earmark kind of literally just came into my email one day, and I was shocked because I didn't know anything about it at all.
Yeah.
And it is something that came in through a environmental or economic, one of those bills that was put forward years ago that's like pie in the sky, you'll never see the money. Well, then there was ARPA money that needed to get spended. So they actually funded these bills. So it came through Rep. Kilcoyne's office. That's how this sort of was the genesis of all of this. And it's a $100,000 state earmark, 40,000 of which at this time has been allocated to the DCR Mass Trails Grant application. The application itself I thought was for $100,000. And so there was an initial request, as you said, for I think 100,000 or 200,000. I can't remember which.
Yeah, it was. I think maybe in the middle.
So somewhere around there. Yeah, I think that they've
yeah.
received one estimate from a consulting firm. It's something that typically you recommend. You can bypass, but because it's under 30B, it's architectural and engineering services, so it is exempt. But it's typically one of those things you do want to put out to bid to see what kind of price you would get. I think the study right now is a bit narrow in scope from the initial estimate that they got. So when you talk about broadening the study out, I think that there needs to be more discussion around that, which is why the select board only allocated that initial $40,000.
Right.
Was that like a roundabout way of answering your question, or
Well,
no?
let me repeat it back, see if I got it. So the select board allocated 40,000 out of the 100,000 earmark, which we think is going to come in, and
CPA allocated 30.
30 to go with the 40.
Right, so if it's a 20% I didn't do the math. If it's a 20% match, then it's,
There may not be a need for utilizing the 30,000 from CPA.
correct.
That was what I was trying to get at.
Right.
What's the minimum we would have to put up in
Right.
CPA money to make this earmark work?
Right.
And it's like,
It's 20.
I'm not getting, it's 20%.
20%.
But 20% of the 40,000 the select board wanted to allocate would be 8,000.
I think the confusion
So
came
that's your-
in, as you said, because they had applied for CPA money before the earmark
Right.
came in, so they didn't want to completely cut out the CPA
Yeah, all right.
funding, but they may not need to use it.
Maybe at some point, somebody will write all this down and we can get the big picture.
I'm working on something called a warrant. It will explain it.
That'll help. All right. Well, I guess the reason I asked that point is how much skin do we have to put into this? Of
Sure.
our own CPA skin. And so that's my real challenge too. Are we at the, are we doing more than we need to do?
Yep. It's a fair question.
So it may come to pass that we don't utilize any CPA money, but we don't have a crystal ball that helps us.
Understood, yeah.
Right. Because we don't know how much we're actually going to get awarded if the grant does get awarded from DCR either.
Yeah.
So sometimes they don't award you the full amount that you ask for either.
And then the last article came from the rec committee and, well, from the youth soccer, Berlin Youth Soccer, but with the support of rec. So as Julie said, a lot of these programs are run sort of alongside of the rec department. So Berlin Youth Soccer had looked at the fields that they play on at South Common and felt that there was risk, danger. I mean, the fields aren't level, they aren't sod all the time. Lots of times it's just mud. Depends on the season. So they came to us and said that they were interested in putting irrigation on the soccer fields and the baseball field as well. And initially their numbers were a little scattered and not sort of backed up with a lot of data, but they came back with a real strong proposal as far as we were concerned. And we said one of the things you're going to have to deal with is the long-term requirements. I mean, the town is not going to be interested in spending this kind of money if there's not some assurance that there's a way to preserve these fields once you've invested this kind of money. So it would be a well, and then the irrigation, and it's a complex process because they've got to juggle the use of the fields and the installation of these changes. So they'd probably end up, if they were to receive funds, doing part of the process this year and part of the process next year. And that way, the fields that weren't being renovated at the time could be utilized for youth soccer, and then the following year, the fields that had been renovated would be utilized, and the fields that hadn't been would be tended to. So a good, strong proposal, and they've spoken with Kristen, and they've committed some of their funds for the maintenance.
Mhm.
They've committed some, I guess you've been saying that there's some funds that you feel might be committed as a result of their willingness to commit.
I will recommend, but that is obviously at the
Yeah.
pleasure of the FinCom and the Select Board, if they so choose to,
Sure.
approve.
Yeah, Tim, were you here when Julie was presenting the part on the maintenance that would go with this?
I know she's been talking about it, and she's talked to us about it.
We actually just
so-
looked at that, which
Yeah.
is the right thing, which is
Yeah.
great.
And I had
It's great.
two
It's coming
really
together.
great conversations with the gentleman from soccer and also another gentleman who happens to be into landscape construction as his gig.
Yeah.
And so very knowledgeable. I really kind of grilled them both pretty heavily because I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what was
Yeah.
going into it. And she's got some good people on her side that
Yeah.
know what they're doing.
Yeah, the proposal was strong. The question is always, you put in a well, how much water are you going to get? And what the demand for this acreage would be on a sustained basis if you were in a year like 2 years ago when we lacked water, as opposed to last year when we had more water than
Tim,
Even now we have more.
anybody knows what to do.
Do it, yeah. Tim, isn't there a vernal pool in that South Commons? I'm not particularly, unless those houses that went on that side of it there, whether they're sucking up all the water, but I think it's
Retention pond?
It's farmable, but it's wet, right?
When I farmed it years ago when I was young, when I worked with Doc Hoffman when he owned it, it's a sandy loam. It moisture migrates through it. I don't know where the water table is. I mean, my sense is that it's not too far from the surface.
Yeah.
But what's going on in your growing zone is substantially different from what's going on, 10 feet down where
Oh,
the
sure.
water table is. So
Sure.
their goal is to really enhance bring in some soil, try to deal with the turf management issue that would help them. And water is going to be an important ingredient, obviously. But the maintenance of it, the aeration and, overseeding and all that sort of stuff, and the need to have expert advice as to how to manage turf is that maintenance part that's crucial. So I think that the town needs to understand that committing the $300,000 is just the beginning. But as Julie points out, I mean, when you've got 200 kids in spring soccer and 150 kids in fall soccer, I mean, and the youth baseball, I mean, the soccer program has just continued to boom, and
Yep.
we're happy to see more kids play soccer than football, I suppose, right? So
No argument there.
yeah, so let them play.
Them be kids.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a technical question when we're talking about this project? Because it has to be done in two parts, does that affect how the warrant article gets written? That they can, if they have to extend the second part
See,
into next fiscal year, does that affect it?
Yeah, the CPA money doesn't have to be rounded into a fiscal year.
Okay, yeah, that's my,
At least, I don't think June is going to make us do that. So, I mean, it's put into a pot and it's utilized. Now, one of the things that the committee's interested in now as we get further into the program is that, sometimes there's unexpended funds that are, and a project is done, so we're going to have to figure out strategies how we roll those back in, whether we need an article at town meeting or we can just do that. So we're planning on having Stuart, I'm not going to remember his last name, Stewart from the consortium, though. So the Community Preservation Act Consortium has a couple staff people in Boston, and we utilize them quite a bit. We're going to ask Stewart to come to Berlin and do a presentation for anybody that wants to do it. I think, we're more likely to maybe do it in the old, 1870 Town Hall, because we're hoping to get all the different committees that benefit from CPA, plus, Select Board and you folks and capital planning, and really try to get everybody up to speed so everybody understands how the pieces fit together and how it works.
So what is the dollar amount that they're asking?
300.
300? Next, looking at 300 for the entire project.
And it's being written as a warrant article, and I advise against putting sunset clauses on warrant articles as much as we can, because you can always close them out if you need to, especially under Unimod.
I wasn't saying about a sunset clause, I just wasn't clear.
Whether
if-
we needed to vote.
How it had to
We could
be
go to the
presented.
next year.
How
Right.
it was going to, if they were going to have to extend it, if.
Yeah. No, it's like the Historic Commission's articles that have used CPA money. Their goal is to leverage that money to apply for, a Mass Historical Commission's potential grant. But you have to put all sorts of pieces together initially, so that money got turned over to them. That's sitting in their account, and at some point, we may very well say, well, it's been X number of years and you haven't spent it. It doesn't appear as though you're ready to, so we're going to claw some of that back. But at this point, they're still making progress, so I think we're content. And that same would be true with soccer. I mean, if for some reason things got delayed and they ended up having to extend out the project, the money would still be there. So.
Thank you.
May I be released?
Don't look at me, it's up
Go,
to
go,
the
please,
chair over
please,
here.
please. The audiovisual stuff was just, yeah.
This is great, huh?
It
Wow.
was the best PowerPoint presentation ever.
Yeah. Well, nothing like a piece of paper. Thank you very much. It's always fun. We
Thanks, Tim.
appreciate what you do. You have the hard jobs.
Can I say we appreciate the maintenance report that
Well,
Rec did?
I mean,
It really, it helps to visualize
That's
going
right.
down the line,
yeah,
how to keep that new shiny soccer field being good in 10 years.
right.
You know?
Yeah, and that's going to be,
Kids
I
will be
mean, in
playing
some
on it.
cases,
Yeah.
it's not going to be, you know, an ingredient, you know, if you buy
Yeah.
a piece of land like the Pisgah piece,
Yeah.
the maintenance issue isn't there. But certainly with, you know, the tennis courts or the pavilion or any of those
Or
things.
somebody says they're going to put a trail in, whatever, yeah.
They have to come up with some ideas about how to put the pieces together.
Yeah,
And
thank
it
you.
worked very well because they clearly heard the message from you and they came to me before I even had to ask the question with a plan. So it was lovely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Teamwork right there.
Well done.
Well, no, we heard, I mean, you guys scolded us 2 years ago.
I wasn't here 2 years ago, it wasn't me.
We did.
That wasn't
We
either.
did.
Yeah, we kept asking, yeah.
We,
So what
we
about-
sure,
What about the maintenance?
we sure did. I'm owning
We
it.
said, we can ask them to discuss it with you, but we're not going to build it into our budget. That's
There you go. Well, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
good to meet you guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Tim.
Everybody, sleep tight now.
First, it probably leads to the question of that come up after the fact now is, well, is the maintenance plan for the basketball and tennis courts
I was
right
just
now?
gonna
We
say.
really never discussed that. Is there anything
Yeah.
that needs to be done on an annual basis? No, every 5 years or anything of that nature?
I think the courts, there was something about the courts and the hoops,
Was
Yeah,
that
they
voted in last year?
I know they replaced
Courts and everything?
hoops as
Is that
they,
voted in?
as they need to
Or
be
budgeted?
replaced, but you're talking about like
Yep.
the
Okay.
ceiling layer
Well,
or
yeah,
something of the
exactly, like
courts?
whatever.
I'll ask.
No, that type of stuff.
yeah, I
that-
don't know how much that might be available there.
I mean,
So
it
we
might
got
be one of
Board
those
of
things
Health
that
next.
needs to be only every 3 or 5 years, and then they come back with a,
I know that
extra
they're standing in the
5,000 that
corridor
they
for a
need.
while.
Yeah.
Right. We also, one thing I meant to bring up, and Julie and
Yeah,
I were
it's
talking
different.
about, and it didn't come up, is mowing. With the irrigation, the fields are going to be available longer, and they're going to grow likely better, and so we're probably going to need some extra assistance on the mowing, because Fred only has extra seasonal help during certain months of the summer. So that is one piece of the discussion I'm having with her, too, that we may need to add a little bit extra for the mowing.
Hi, Stan. Hello.
Well, don't try, oh my God.
Dumpster diver guy, my
You weren't supposed to
favorite
come.
guy.
Your hero.
My hero. Yeah.
I'm tired.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
And you're not allowed to fall, so.
You're basically, he was on the finance committee for many years.
You don't get off the
Took
hook
over.
that
Do you
easy.
get, do you use the transfer station in town?
I do not.
Okay, because he runs that, he basically had to resign his position.
Which one are you
here.
starting with, so I can
Okay.
pull it up
That
on
was
the
exactly a year ago.
We're gonna
last
start with
February.
the
Okay.
easy one first.
Yeah.
Which one?
Animal inspector.
Animal inspector.
Just so I get it.
You got it, I'll pull it up.
We doing Board of Health transfer, Neshoba?
Animal inspector first.
Inspector. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
I'm gonna make this real quick.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen if you give me
Animal
just 1 minute.
inspector.
Uh-oh.
You have to like,
Oh, it has to be in front of you.
Yeah, in front of you. So I would just turn it.
It has to, it doesn't
There
have to
you
be
go.
like,
About
yeah,
a
it just
foot.
needs to be facing your mouth.
Got it up?
Give me 1 second. There you are.
Well, this is gonna be easy because we are trying to hand this one off to the police department.
Yeah, 'cause they talked about it in their budget.
Yes.
And this, so they'll combine our piece with their piece and pay one person.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal.
And we will continue to pay this person to the end of June. And
Okay.
then we're done, and somebody else gets the pleasure of signing off on the payroll.
Yeah, we're hoping, we just haven't gotten the final confirmation on that, but if that is the case, it would make sense to combine the departmental budgets into one. So that's just a piece we're
If
still
not,
doing.
I have a possible backup with a new neighbor next door who has expressed some interest, so
It's always good.
I don't want to do it. I don't mind the counting of the animals, but I'm not going near chickens, so we are finding someone else to do it. cousins used to lock me in the chicken house with over 100,000 chickens.
Uh-oh.
I'm not going near them. Okay, and then, so now.
So you're just going up by the 2%, the $43.
Yeah.
All right.
Very
Okay.
simple. Neshoba Health, let's start there.
Give me one moment. You're faster than me.
Excuse me, can you just sign in for me?
Oh, thanks. Susan Smith.
That's how you want to go into the minutes.
Wasn't supposed to sign in as Bruce Springsteen?
Go ahead, Stan, we know better.
All right, all set.
Okay, Neshoba Health. We did the 7.5% increase, which was the same as last year, and they announced it in our Board of Health meeting. Jim Gareffi attended, and he announced that it would be 7.5%.
Okay.
So it's pretty clean.
Excellent.
And then we move on to Neshoba Nursing, and it's the same increase. And that includes your visiting nurses, flu clinics, and things like that. It's kind of like taxes. They don't leave me any room to play anymore, so.
All right, which one are you going on to next?
That's 1, 2, 3. Board of Health. And in the Board of Health, we have the Board of Health members. We get our salaries in there, and we did the 2%. And then we have our clerk, Donna, and there is an increase there. It's a market adjustment, and I only do what June tells me to do, so.
Smart lady.
And all our other expenses, which totals up to $1,000, is just what we spent last year. Any questions? I look at June, you guys have to learn to smile and give feedback to the people who are presenting. I've been through, to you before, this is my 11th year, and all I get is stone faces.
It's after 9 o'clock.
I know,
Yeah.
and I know
I
you
get
didn't bring
punchy
cookies.
after 9, so
I was
good
going
luck.
to make blueberry muffins,
Ooh.
No,
but then I thought it would be too much of a bribe. Or it would be considered a bribe, and that wouldn't be good.
Oh, wait, is this supervised?
You might get them later if things go well.
Okay, the fun one, transfer station, where all the money is. All the money is spent, anyways.
That's what we've been waiting for, right?
I had to pull this up differently because we changed it a little bit, right?
Oh, that $1,000?
Yeah.
I was trying to be all-inclusive, and I included an additional $1,000 because I thought we would go with a revolving fund. And I was told you had to put $1,000 in the budget, and so I did it, and June, with her red pen, and crossed it out.
What did you do?
She was trying to fund a
You
revolving
did this stuff, I mean, she...
Yeah, did it?
Included the supplemental.
Yeah.
With the budget, yeah, so I just did it,
Yeah.
I figured I'd bring up this one.
Now, I believe you all have the information in front of you. Do you have any, should we start off, any hot burning questions?
Not really, but the generic trash disposal is up 10% roughly. But yeah, I'm just saying out loud the obvious thing on the page, yeah.
Well, that's why I brought Stan, because Stan can talk to what people actually bring to the transfer station. And we got into an argument actually today because we were trying to figure out what constitutes household trash. How many bags? When you have a guy bringing in 3 or 4 truckloads and said, and I've got 4 more at home.
What?
No,
Like a hoarder?
Couple calling it a house clean out and saying,
It's household trash.
So what we're doing.
That's
to
abuse of
address
that.
Is we're changing the flyer around that goes out to people when they buy a sticker this year. So
See,
that it
we've
looks
been marking
different,
this
because
up.
people will hang on to it from 3 years ago because we haven't changed the look of it. So they just think everything's the same.
Right.
We're going to try and more clearly define what household trash is.
Yep.
Which is what a sticker will entitle you to
Good.
bring in. But we're also going to start implementing additional fees for a lot of things we've been taking in under the guise of household trash. I mean, since Stan has been on, we've started charging for sectional sofas and things like that.
Makes sense,
Which
yeah.
is not really household trash.
Yeah.
Household trash is what comes out of your kitchen wastebasket, maybe your office wastebasket, something like that. But with our open top container, we get all kinds of things brought in, well, you know, bathroom fixtures, all that. So we're going to start implementing charges on that. And how we're going to do that is we're going to be enrolling and buying equipment for something called Skylink, so that we actually can take debit cards, credit cards, and so forth down there, because we have no computer access.
We have no internet down there.
Yeah, we have no internet, so we're going with Elon Musk's Starlink. We've tried it, we had somebody come down with the equipment, we have got good reception, so that opens a door for us to start more equitably charging people.
Yep.
As people bring in all kinds of stuff, like recently Stan dealt with this guy that did a house clean out, and it was multiple truckloads.
Yeah,
And
no, yeah.
that's just not fair when you go across the board. So we're going to try and level the
Playing field.
level the playing field.
To a lesser extent, it would be, just some of the other things that, children's toys that go into that open top container, and other types of furniture that aren't necessarily outlined on the fee structure. So it's more of a trying to concentrate on collecting fees for things that are being disposed of that in the past have just kind of been, just throw it in the open top, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like the large plastic children's toys, those are not recyclable. They're trash.
So they're big, they're bulky, they're not super heavy, but
They're big and
requires
bulky.
hauling that
Volume.
container
Yep.
more often.
And we're
that's-
paying for airspace,
Right.
basically. So we're addressing that this year.
So, and our goal is still, it's taken me a while to get there, but that our fees collected between stickers and what we charge for, white goods and other things will equal the expenses generated at the transfer station, not the labor, I want to be clear, but the expenses. So, and we're close, really close. We
Yep.
can make the revolving fund or the revolving account work. But that is our goal, so that the transfer station kind of pays for itself.
Do you have to take everything people bring and just charge them for it, or can you say no to some of the things I've never used a transfer station because our community has a dumpster that we pay for, so.
We can say no, because there's stuff on our flyer that we do not accept.
Okay.
Whether it's antifreeze, hazardous waste.
Yeah, hazard,
of course. Building, demolition materials,
Yep, C&D.
we just say no.
And a good part of that is really dictated by DEP, things that are banned from disposal.
Right.
Do we take small amounts of construction debris, or if somebody's tearing apart a two-stair stoop or something, we're not going to turn them away, because there's a good chance they'll end up on the side of the road. And what choice do one of our residents have? So we're trying to find a middle ground that offers some equity.
And this year, Paul and I are coming to you with some very hands-on experience, because when we lost our staff last January, Paul and I worked the transfer station for 2 months. So We filled in, we did the job, so if there was ever a question of we didn't know something, I think we do now.
We learned a lot.
How close are you to matching all your fees and stuff like that to expenses? I mean, do you have a general
I'm within
dollar
like 10 or
amount?
15,000.
Oh, you're actually within.
I've
Okay.
been raising, you can't just take the transfer station sticker and increase it by $100. Everybody would have a fit. So I've been increasing it slowly.
Incrementally, yep.
And we're trying not to do it this year, but raise the other fees.
Yep. Yep.
To compensate that. The other big part of our budget is we're trying to add an additional 6 hours a week. And that is because there are days, Saturday we have
We do
two.
have 2 on them Saturday.
But Wednesdays and Thursdays, you can get 12 cars in there at a time. Now, what happens is some guy goes up and says, "Hey, Stan," and asks a question about this. In the meantime, some guy's unloading his truck into the open top and getting away because Stan's attention was diverted elsewhere. And it's not hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
You try to keep track of everybody.
What is she saying about me?
I'm saying you haven't
You've
grown
lost a step in the past year.
Yeah. You haven't grown the eyes in the back of your head yet, I'm telling you. But it's, if you've ever been to the transfer station, and Scott, I think, when it's busy, I'm talking even 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh, yeah.
You
It
got-
gets busy.
and you got to keep an eye on them, because they know if you're not paying attention.
And part of the underlying problem with that is how the transfer station is laid out, which evolved over 20 or 25 years. Piecemeal, there was no, it's come a long way from from when the transfer station was first installed with one compactor, one open top, and that was it. It was simple. But now we have metal container, glass container, mixed paper container, and mattress container.
Clothing.
Clothing. I mean, every time the DEP comes up with something else, we either need to provide another container or whatever, because the bans just keep squeezing the whole disposal industry in terms of what people can throw away. So we have to try and accommodate through whatever recycling avenues that are out there.
And we we want to shine at the transfer station, because the DEP would love to have us go pay as you throw. And they want us to sell the bags or stickers, and we're trying not to do
Seems
that.
to be everyone's reaction.
Thank you for that.
Oh, my
So we're
God.
doing our best to try to manage the amount of trash, because they'd like to see all trash go away. I don't know, and be back to burning stuff in
Some
our
people think
back
the trash
ends.
ferry still exists.
Good.
I would just like to say, as a weekly user of the transfer station, the last year has been lots of evidence of great improvement. And every time I have a chance to see Stan,
agree. I
I make
agree.
sure that I say at least hi, because I can see the work that's been going on. And I know I appreciate it. It's not my favorite thing to do every week, but I will tell you, it's
mine, though.
it's so far better organized and thoughtful than it has been. So, thank you for that.
Yeah,
Once
I agree.
Stan came on board, and with our new other members down there, one of the things we emphasized is that we're in the service business. Our customers are taxpayers, are residents, and we need to provide service and need to be friendlier and all that. And I think there have been some substantial changes within the last year, and all for the good. And we're looking to keep fine-tuning it more as we go forward.
Good for you.
Definite improvement. I won't tell you what happens after dark.
Well, I am
You didn't see the camera?
happy to see the later Thursday hours come back again. That, the closing at 5 o'clock on a weekday,
Yeah.
though during COVID was perfectly fine working from home, but it was, nobody, how could you get to there during those hours? It just wasn't.
Yeah, I think there'll be greater, it's probably been, 18 to 20 folks using it currently between those hours. I've been kind of keeping track. But I think it'll pick up when it starts getting to be light.
Yes, it
until 7.
definitely will,
As
exactly,
people away
so
for
the summer
weekend
gets in and
on
stuff like
Thursday
that.
And drop off trash on their way out of town kind of thing. And so I think it'll get more and more. And the people that do use it are people that tell me that, I used to come first thing Saturday because that was my time to get the trash in. So this hopefully, and I've seen it, I've seen, there's no line out there on Saturday morning like there used to be. So,
Good.
and we're taking some of the crush off of Saturday and spreading it out onto the quieter times. No, there's no doubt that we're condensing the noon to 5 folks to 2 to 5 on Thursday, because those are much busier hours. But we're also taking some of the Saturday off, which is good.
And we're still looking for some more help. So if you have an 18-year-old at home, you'd like to, part-time job.
Not yet, 9 and 6. Go a while away.
We're even looking to see if, the high schoolers want to,
Yeah.
if we could teach them about recycling and
Yeah.
have everybody come in and recycle bottles and cans for an hour or two. I'll tell you, if they won't let me, but if I could make everybody spend 15 or 20 minutes, you take a turn once a year recycling, you'd learn a lot of what could be recycled and cannot. And that's what Stan spends a lot of his time, is pulling all the stuff that isn't recyclable out of the recycling.
Or isn't rinsed. If I get one message out there, it's rinse your recycling.
Okay.
Oh my God. Anyway.
Any
But I
other
think-
questions?
Easy to
No.
digress in this
Yes.
business.
I'd just like to echo what has been said in that I hear wonderful things. I don't often hear things that are good in my line of work, but I do hear good things often about the transfer station and Stan. And I also wanted to thank, you both. I know you put in a lot of volunteer time earlier this year and ongoing, but especially in those first few months. And unfortunately, given ethics, we couldn't pay them. So I just want folks to know that when the transfer station stayed open, they could have closed, but they kept it open, volunteering their
Wow.
time to do so.
You
So
can't close the dump.
I know, but, it's, unfortunately, you can't
you.
be on
Thank
board
you, Sue.
and get
Thank
paid.
you, Paul.
So,
Thank you, thank you.
Highway would have been really busy along the roadsides.
yeah. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I think
Yeah,
people really
thank you.
appreciated that.
And we even worked one day in minus 12-degree weather.
There you go.
So if that's all, please approve our budget. And if when June says it's time to do the revolving account, we will. But we only do what June
I think
tells us
we
to
can
do.
do it. I think it's doable. I think so.
That's really wise, Sue. Just don't even argue with her, just do it.
I don't. If June says this, I do it.
We
Saves
don't
me
argue
time.
well, we ask nicely,
Maybe
but we
sometime.
don't argue well.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you here, Stan.
Nope, I'm going to unplug it.
Squirrel.
You guys know.
Trip anyway.
You know, we are having fun.
That's, hey, you gotta have fun. If you can't have fun, oh man.
What the hell then you have to deal with.
I'll make you muffins.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Thank
See
you.
Paul, Sue, Stan.
And probably next is just to do some things on what's coming up with the schools, going over the schedules and everything like that.
Bye.
So, which I think everybody saw from the email, so the school is going to, they're going to be presented with the first budget at next Tuesday at Tohoto. I guess the invite indicated they're going to start discussion around 5:30. So I plan on attending there, and of course, anybody else who wants to attend, please come by, especially too if something comes up and I can't be there, but I'm expecting to be there. And in the meantime, too, we have well, we were requesting them to come in to talk to us on the 28th, which would have been the very next day. We reached out to Carol and Nancy requested, because of, being only the next day and not knowing what else could come up, requested to come in on the following Wednesday, March 6th. So schools will be presenting their budget to us on Wednesday, March 6th.
March 6th, okay.
So that leaves the agenda open also for next week. And I think that's where we need to start going through and approving some of the lines in the budget.
That would be my suggestion.
So my question is, you're not going to be here next week, Mary?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, but, I'm okay with you guys.
Okay, just checking.
The problem is I'm in the UK. I have to work the following day. I can't get up in the middle of the night and join you, because I need to work the next day, so the timing doesn't work for me next week. The week after, I don't think I'm going to be here March 6th. I think I'm going to be in Pennsylvania, but I can link in
Okay.
for the school discussion.
Everything's uploaded, right? So if you had questions or anything, you could always shoot them off to Scott.
Well, it's in our Google Drive, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
What do we normally do? We just start, who presented first, and we just revisit it?
So typically, I've been having the select board at least 2, if not 3 meetings now, do what I call the low-hanging fruit, the ones that are relatively straightforward in terms of budgets, having them approve those.
So they're off,
get
they're gone.
complicated and
Thumbs
harder.
up.
And
Okay.
typically, the FinCom has wanted to hear the recommendation of the select board before you make a recommendation. So we don't necessarily go in order from top to bottom. Typically, I'd have you take up the items that the select board have previously voted on and go that way, if that works for you.
How far is the select board through the?
They're going to do a significant amount Monday night. So
Okay.
I would say right now they're probably 2/3 through.
Okay.
And so, but the ones that are left are tougher ones. So the bigger budgets, public safety. There is a draft budget in the drive right now. It is incomplete. It was there more for just viewing purposes so that we could work on some materials that we were putting together. But I am still a bit hamstrung because we don't have the capital information either from the schools. However, I've been assured we will actually have that the morning of the 28th. And I've reached out to Anna Crane and asked if perhaps next Thursday we could have a capital meeting. So we are trying to line that up as well.
Well, capital, we're supposed to be at the select board on Monday.
Yep, so that's
we
going to
should-
be delayed. So,
So we're not going to be at the select board on Monday?
No, Anna has asked if we can push that back. We
Okay.
just were communicating about that today, so we didn't finalize it yet. I'll make
Okay.
sure an email goes out about that.
Okay.
That's for capital.
That's for capital.
Yeah,
Right.
it's, we were going to present our final.
So what I did was the sort of good news is the select board is scheduled right now to meet every Monday in March. I don't know that we'll end up doing that. We might probably meet 3 out of the 4, but I think we will definitely meet the first 2. So it either be the 4th or the 11th, I believe, that capital will come forward. But Anna and I literally just started talking about it today, so you're getting breaking news that hasn't quite been disseminated
Well, my
yet.
other question too, because I know this has been floating around, and I know the assessments was done. Is that public yet?
The assessments.
The assessment of all the buildings?
Oh, the facilities. I'm sorry, I thought you were meaning school assessments.
I'm sorry, the facility study,
It'd be nice if
because
somebody could
going
give me an
into
Excel
the
file.
capital discussion on the school, it'd
Yep.
be really good if we
Right.
could see it in part of the bigger picture with all the other buildings.
I actually have a call tomorrow. There was feedback that was given from the smaller subgroup, and she had some questions on it before she can finalize that. We were just having the first draft reviewed, and then I will be sending those out to everybody. So I'm hoping within the next week or so to get that out to
Okay.
everyone.
So even if we could get something to look at before the capital planning meeting?
Are you thinking about, you're talking about just the school, just?
Well, we should, everything, so we can
Yep.
see, it because capital is looking at everything. And
Okay.
to be able to see everything in relationship
Yep,
would be helpful.
okay. I'll see what I can get.
You haven't gotten anything from the schools yet, right? Other than what they,
What was in that
Well,
PowerPoint?
What was
one
in
of the
that PowerPoint,
problems
right?
was the schools didn't follow procedure. They did not send anything to
Yeah,
capital
that's the one.
planning.
Revenue?
Yeah,
So when
that's
we
the one I
went,
learned.
we were supposed to make our
Get the
vote.
print. I couldn't get to
at
work.
the end- Well, I
to
don't
fit
vote,
on a
but they were
page.
supposed to make their vote at the end of January.
Right.
And so they voted 0 for the schools because the schools did not turn their materials in time.
Right.
And so now it's very frustrating because there's not a lot of money in free cash. I know you were working on the other proposal
Yep.
for the, what's the word, debt? So I can't
A
remember.
potential debt exclusion override, yeah, we're trying to gather information if we could even do something like that at this point.
Yeah, and so, yeah, there is a risk that we may have to push off to next year because, well, they will have to, because they just haven't gotten.
Julie, is this the question, Kristen, of the roof at Berlin Memorial?
Yeah.
It-
Yeah,
well,
I'm just seeing, I can look at
It's
them.
1.3.
Is it approved?
No, the school committee hasn't voted on this yet. This is just a preliminary budget that the budget subcommittee put together that had 1.3 million approximately for capital at Berlin Memorial, and then another 600 and something at Tohoto, of which our portion was something like $280,000, if I'm remembering the split correctly. So we're talking, just round it off to 1.5 million, it's probably more like 1.6. Our policy, or your policy rather, it says 30% of free cash goes to capital up to. So since free cash was 1.777, which I love that I can remember that number, 30% is $533,000. So even if you were to, or the capital committee were to recommend allocating all 30% to the schools, we are nowhere near 1.3. But I did have a great discussion actually with the superintendent today about the process, because she mentioned something about there used to be capital meetings held during the day back a long time ago, and we used to ask for information from the schools. And I said, well, I can only speak to last year's process, but they're due November 30th. Last year, the school said to me, can we have until we come before FinCom on December 14th? They needed an extra couple of weeks last year to get the capital information together. So I said, we said, fine. So by that preliminary meeting that they came before you in December, they had both capital and operating level and above level services recommendations. And so Carol's like, she had, I don't know if that got misconstrued, but I said, you have to submit something in order for you to be brought before capital, because I can't just bring you to a meeting without something that's had a chance to be looked at and reviewed by capital.
So just to affirm that, Kristen, yes, the operating and capital requests came to FinCom routinely in a timely fashion, and we always asked them, could you do a little faster? It's too bad Stan left, because he was always saying that, could you bring it in a month early, could you bring it in earlier?
Right.
But it was presented to us, much like Assabet presented.
That's my
That-
recollection. as
That's the
well.
way it was presented to FinCom. So all the capital considerations and all the operating budget considerations were presented, and they were done in a way that you could track what they were asking for.
Right.
It was clear.
Yes.
And
Clear,
that's
like,
my
again, like
recollection as
Assabet.
well.
And I have
So
reached
that's,
out.
that's the norm. Now, Carol may have experienced something internal where there were daytime meetings, but with respect to this committee, and when I came on, the town was just creating the capital planning committee. It wasn't even, it didn't even exist, so we were doing all of that in FinCom.
Well, they were, if you're going way back, when I joined in 2006, it wasn't an official committee. That was the capital planning. It was, they referred to as the ad hoc committee, and it was, I know, led by, at that time, it was the tax collector, and everything was met during the daytime, which none of the finance committee members could attend.
Okay.
So, but again, it wasn't an official committee, but they would come before us, they would collect the information, and it was also in its early days. I think, even though it was already established in 2006, I think it had only been established like 3 or 4 years
So that's
previous to that.
that's what the
And, you know,
superintendent
That's very
experienced.
helpful to know.
And
Uh,
Carol was a
Yes.
principal here. in
Yeah,
Berlin,
that's
and
what she
may be
experienced.
remembering
Coming
that.
to
Yeah,
those
and that was still the way
Yes.
it was up until 2012. I don't know, somewhere between
Yeah. I
think that's
2012 and 21, it became an official committee, and also now they meet more in the evening. But either way, it was still the point of getting, by them participating in, they also had an idea of what funds were available. Right now, it's like they're just moving forward without regardless of knowing what, if funds are even available, possible to them, and how much they don't even want to look at the revenue available, they just want to look at what their next needs are and how much more it's going to cost. They're only looking at one side. And as a result, they are putting themselves into a situation of constantly being, we don't know, they're putting themselves into a situation of also making themselves ignorant of everything by ignoring the process. And I don't know why. I mean, it's like the budget doesn't seem to be the priority of this school board. So,
It's
yeah.
one, the school committee has 3 responsibilities legally: hiring the superintendent, presenting a fiscal responsibly budget annually, and supervising the superintendent, and developing policy. That's it. They don't have any other jobs. That's it.
Yeah, and of course, we've already seen what the numbers are. I mean, we've had, we're having our meeting. We have, mentioned before, we meet with a member of the Board of Finance Committee member in Boylston, Select Board member, Berlin Select Board member, myself for the Finance Committee, and of course, Kristen and, is it Lisa, right?
April.
Or April, sorry, April on the town administrators on this. So we've had our second meeting. Of course, unfortunately, nobody was able to, that was at that meeting, though, thank you, Julie, for attending
Yes.
the meeting that the school had with Boylston that Monday, and your email came out just as we were talking about this.
It was like perfect timing.
Yes, you couldn't have timed it any better. So we got at least that update was going on there. And so we're, coordinating to make sure we, at least what the message that's being, what Boylston understands, because it seems like everybody's just getting things through the grapevine, and what we understand, that we're all sharing that information and keeping us, everybody up to date with what's going on in preparation for what is going to come on Tuesday night.
And I know,
Because I just want to say, one of the things I noticed compared to previous years is more people informally talking to me really got hit last year with our tax increases.
Absolutely.
And are very,
Absolutely.
incredibly sensitive, more so than I've ever known.
Yep.
I've only lived here since like 2016, but more so than I've noticed before. So anything that we do, I mean, I think there is more resistance this year to do anything that's going to cause us to do a significant increase like we did last year.
Yeah, with market value increase as well as the percentage
Yes.
increase, which we levied,
Because the
it's
assessment,
a huge
change. Because the December assessments have also caused
yes.
people's taxes to go up.
right.
Yep.
For me, I can only speak to the 23 and 24 budget processes, and 23 largely by hearsay. But when I came in, one of the first things that I wanted to look at was what is the established process for Select Board, FinCom, capital budget season. There was a well-established process here that worked well. There was no need to change it. If I had felt that there was a need, I would have advocated for that, but the process that was in place, it worked. And, we had documented history of it working, and I am just not understanding why everything had to change, and there also just really was no communication on the part of the schools that they were changing the process so deeply from what we have done year over year. And it was always, they came in mid-December with a preliminary budget. It always had an above level and a level, and we often settled somewhere in between. And then when they came back in February, those numbers were much firmer and pretty much almost final. But we understood they still hadn't passed it yet, and they hadn't sent us our assessment letter, but we basically came to that agreement. And I know last year was a bit of an anomaly, and I said it then that this cannot happen again, and I stand firmly behind that because we don't have the free cash to do what we did last year, nor do I believe that the need is necessarily there either on the special education side, and that's a conversation we have to have, and I understand that there are privacy issues there, but when we're talking numbers, there really aren't. We don't need names, we don't need
No,
specific
just
information. We need
yeah.
to understand costs and what they are currently, what they're projected to be, and what reimbursements have come in.
Right.
In FY '25 to offset that $700,000 gap that we had last year.
So Kristen, let me underscore what you're just saying is that for fiscal '24, we did not receive an assessment letter from the school district. And on the
Until
day
May
of
31st, yeah.
And on the day of town meeting, we did not know what the school budget was going to look like that morning. Just want to remind everybody of that, and this is extremely abnormal. And if you do the simple thing, like I look at this, our weekly item newspaper that comes out, the whatever it is, handful of surrounding towns, is it 8 towns or whatever it is, every week there's a news article on the back and forth between the municipalities and the schools, either district or standalone schools. They're being reported on, the towns are coming in saying, well, we got to have this problem. The school says, well, we're going to work on our numbers. And then the state numbers come out, and then the schools say, oh, we're going to have to adjust our budget. So this is that conversation is normal.
Correct.
And we're not having it. So what we're experiencing, and Kristen, unfortunately, you arrived just in time to see this. It's last year, the fiscal '24 budgeting process was abnormal, and this one is abnormal. And I don't know how we get ourselves to normal, but we're not there.
No, and I've never seen anything like it, I'll be honest. And,
No.
you know, I'm 17 years now into local government. This is what I've done for my whole career and hope to continue to do. What is very concerning to me is the lack of communication. Because I understand if, you know, there is some type of advisory at the state level that the school should be budgeting, should have a different budgeting process, or there's some type of training that the school committee wants to learn. I completely understand that, but they need to communicate with us and make sure that that dovetails with our deadlines for town meeting and for submitting capital and submitting the budget. And that's just not happening. And then we've just found out they just weren't going to come to the FinCom meeting. I'm concerned about what you just spoke about, Julie. People, you know, $600 tax bill increases is tremendous, and that is a hardship for people. I can't see how we can ask the residents to bear something similar to that again this year in good conscience.
So I did give Kristen, you and Scott a draft, and I fly out Friday morning, so,
Okay.
I mean, I have this computer with me, we can talk about it, but whether or not, on the subject of communication, do we want to start from a draft to communicate clearly what the town needs and expects? And then I'd also, you know, when you guys decide whether or not a draft is reasonable, whether to take the same message to Boylston.
Could I, yeah, what I was going to say is, having attended that one meeting at Boylston, it's also clear that Boylston has its own schedule and method. They have their own way. And so if we could be coordinate with them in showing the calendar so that the schools know.
Well, you can work backward. I think our 45-day for the assessment letter from the schools would be March.
That's universal. But
Yes.
But Boylston's internal calendars for
Yes.
when they do things is different than ours.
Yeah, you put that in your email, which was helpful.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that at the sort of joint meeting that we had. And that was a big, important piece of that we need to figure out how to get, you know, everybody on the same page. And I have to say, just the information sharing back and forth about their process versus our process has been really, really helpful. I think one of the challenges, and Mary, and I apologize, I took a day and a half off, so I have not had a chance to read your letter.
I figured
but,
that's fine.
One of the things I keep hearing from the schools is they're being advised not to present numbers until they're final. And I think that's something we need to address, and I don't know if you hit on that at all.
I did, and let
Okay.
me just sum it since you've raised it, which is I think the Mars consultant that they spoke with there might have been a misunderstanding about that, because it's normal. You can just look at the towns around us. It's normal to put in your budget estimates. And to talk about level funding and level services, that's normal. What the consultant might have said is perhaps, and I don't know what the consultant said, perhaps said, don't try to get your actual numbers out there. And budgets are estimates, right?
Sure.
So we're kind of looking at, well, where are we with fiscal '24? What is your level services, level spend budget? What is it?
Right.
And that's an answer that we can't seem to get.
Right, and I also think that the confusion that happened on the floor in both Berlin and Boylston, and it was a bit more confusing from what I understand in Boylston than even here, is sort of being used as the justification for not giving those numbers out early because they don't want to have misinformation out there. I think that was a procedural issue that happened last year that has nothing to do with information sharing.
Yeah, right. And the fact that the consultant was cited as a rationale for not giving us numbers, I think the consultant was not understood.
Well, I think,
Is my take on
I'm
it.
still thinking it's excuses. It's just like when we ask for numbers regarding special education, we get thrown up the privacy things. We're just asking for numbers. Nobody's ever asked for anything to go in and directly look at the books on this. We just want the numbers. And all we do is get excuses from the members of the school board, so.
Can I have a technical question, because we're bringing up the 45-day letter? Now, normally, if we had gotten that the 45 days before town meeting, if between that time and town meeting the schools discovered there's a discrepancy, they would just have to bring that to town meeting, or do they just have to go with the budget that?
I think you can go down from the assessed letter, but not up. How's that, Cliff?
That's right.
Okay, that was how.
You can go down.
Yes.
We always ended up in my 6 years. We'd have to have a meeting like the same day as town meeting, because our finance director would say, the number we're presenting is wrong. It needs to be, it'd be lower. It would be some other magical number. And so in order to bring it to the town meeting floor, we'd have to meet. But it was never like $100,000 or, even like $50,000. It was always like 13,000 or 12,700 or whatever. So, yeah, but it couldn't be higher. It had to be lower.
Okay.
Because whatever is presented at the 45-day, or voted on by the school committee at the 45-day mark is what goes in the warrant. So that can be an amended motion, as you mentioned, or it can be lower.
Yeah.
Just can't be higher. And that's interesting that there's been a bit of a last-minute change before, that's not a new thing.
Almost every year, we'd have to meet. And because I don't even, and sometimes the explanations were so abstract from the finance person. I'm like, just tell me the number, we'll vote on it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's lower than what we're proposing, so that doesn't matter.
This year we were higher.
Let's-
Last year, rather.
Yeah, let's just make it where it needs to be.
Yeah. I want to work together. I want to have that communication. And we worked on the lease today, Carol and I, and had a conversation. And I think we're all on the same page. We want to work together and try to increase the information sharing and go from there. I'm very supportive of Carol and Nancy. I think they do a fantastic job in what they do. I think we should back them in their efforts, because I think they really are trying hard to follow those procedures and processes, and I think they're facing some challenges along the way.
Yeah. What year is the building for Berlin Memorial?
99 or 98?
98, okay. Do we have a copy of the roofing contract? Because I can look at that.
It
I used
was
to do
probably
that.
done as part of the building, so
Should
it
have
would be part of the overall plan.
Do we have that here? Because I can look at it.
Can check with Fred and see
Okay.
if we have.
Yeah, because I'm going to help her out too with the roof at Boylston. Looks like they're
Oh,
ranging
awesome.
from 2 to 7 million.
Yeah.
Just to give from my history. with
Well,
them.
and one of the things we talked about too, and we'll see what they come forward with capital, is the possibility of putting the Berlin roof off 1 year
Especially
and
with
applying for the
some
MSBA
shingles are
funding
30,
for that
50
next year,
shingles.
because they applied for Boylston
Not 25,
Elementary this
but
year.
They can be.
And you
Just
can
depends on
apply
what's
for
like
more than
looking at
one
the
school,
contract.
but
But you can't do it in the
It's
same,
too
you can't do it in
late.
this, oh, we missed the deadline for the other schools, or is it, or you can't?
they
do
were
that-
under the impression that you could only apply for one school, and Carol was going to pull that language and give that to me. I contacted MSBA directly because I've worked with them a fair amount in the past, and I didn't know if that was a change, because in my former community, we used to put one in for every school every year for the accelerated, or every couple of years for the accelerated repair. And they said you can apply for multiple schools in the same year.
Okay.
But the problem is now we don't have time.
But that
So-
grant, does that require the town to do any matching, or is it a straight grant?
No,
for-
but it requires a vote of the select board as well as the school committee, the select board in that community. So
Okay.
we would have to look at it. My concern, and we have to talk about the roof and putting it off a year, is if that's going to cause any problems
Yeah.
with leaks or massive issues, because obviously then that's not worth it.
Yeah, that's why I was getting antsy and kept asking if we have something in, if we really have to get it done, because we don't have, like, hopefully maybe you can find a lower amount, but we
Or
did
even-
not-
yeah.
We did not have a million and change
Yeah.
hanging around to pay for that.
Even, yeah, I'll handle that and keep you guys in the loop.
Can a capital repair like that be an override question?
Not an override, but it could be a debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion.
Yep, it's debt exclusion for capital expenses allowed. So that would be for however long you finance it for, 5, 10, 20 years. I would recommend a shorter term for something like that. And then when that comes off the books, it comes off, which is why a lot of people are
I
more
know that, yes.
favorable to debt
I used the wrong
exclusion.
term. I understood that
Yeah.
when I said it.
No, it's really funny because I'm used to, in my former community, people would pass debt exclusions for like a lot of things, but you said the word override and everybody was like, no, because that's a permanent
It's
adjustment on your
permanent
taxes.
adjustment on the tax, yes.
So,
All right, so I think we really just need to get our numbers together next week and see where, where exactly the budget numbers look at right now.
yeah.
And then we can figure out how the schools will sit in there.
Yep.
And I think we'll have a better idea after the Tuesday night meeting and.
My draft, I just did a little bit of arithmetic to give you what the, what the 2.5% ceiling would look like, and I pulled out the free cash from last year.
I have
So the
a-
numbers are in that, they're spelled out.
I have what's probably a naive or ignorant question. Supposing that the school department proposal is totally unacceptable or mostly unacceptable, what's the communication around that? What's the work process to make that change or adjustment at this point? Like,
Well, the deadline for them to submit their final budget and the letter is March 22nd.
okay.
So we do have less than a month from, well, this is assuming that they voted on the 27th. I don't think they're going to vote it on the 27th. I think they're going to have a preliminary discussion on the 27th. So my concern
Yeah.
there again is that we're going to get now into March before we see a final number. I'm guessing we're just going to get a final number on March 22nd, and we're going to have to print their budget in the warrant along with the FinCom recommended budget.
Also, it sounds like from what,
That's what I want to know. Okay.
when they were talking about their schedule with Boylston, they were talking about just having a week before they finalized it for hearing. And so they basically have a presentation of it.
The school committee or the FinCom?
The school committee would
Oh.
have a presentation a week before it was due. Because they said the problem they thought the problem they had last year was that they didn't allow that week after they decided on their budget.
Well, I don't know what we can do in a week. That's the
And-
problem.
But
Have they had hearings?
The budget subcommittee has been meeting. My understanding is the preliminary budget is being presented to the school committee for the first time next Tuesday.
they don't have regularly scheduled meetings, so.
There's a
Sorry.
budget subcommittee that's been meeting all along, so the budget subcommittee, I think, is taking it to the full school committee on the 27th.
Right, they've given updates, I think. I mean, they've
Yeah.
had dialogue, but this is the first time that the full preliminary budget's being presented. So there's going to be back and forth. I mean, they're not, I really don't think they're just going to stamp it Tuesday night and that's going to be it. I think it's going to go back and forth until, like you said, up to perhaps a week before they owe it to us.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
And there's a whole mechanism that has to go on with voting at town meeting if there's a FinCom recommended budget. The school committee budget does get printed in the warrant as it is. That's a requirement.
Yeah.
But then we can talk more about the process, as we continue on. But there is a whole process for how that occurs.
Okay, thank you.
And then if Boylston and Berlin don't match, it can ultimately result in a district meeting. There's a whole.
Oh, yeah, I've actually lived in a district that had to do that.
Yeah.
Well, almost the good thing is the ugliness of that is such that it's mostly detrimental to the schools, the way it works on that, because basically they'll be stuck to the funding of this past year that they are in, and that isn't usually not, that's a very undesirable situation for them.
Right.
So there is a reason to come together.
Yes.
On this. It's just that the last minute of everything is going to be a problem.
Right, as June was just saying, if we don't have a budget agreement by July 1, then they have to do what's called 1/12 budgeting. It's month by month.
It has to get pre-approved, right?
Yep,
By the state.
by the state.
Okay. 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
tired.
Yeah,
I hear you.
I'm with you on that one.
Just,
Is there an official, you going to do it, Shane?
What, meeting adjourned, or?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You'll get
Thank you, guys.
You'll get this.
All right,
That's your job, Shane.
all right. Yeah, I'm tired.
9:45.
Is there a
Thank you,
second?
Brittany.
Technically.